Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining another live session with me on my Declassified Caribbean channel. Thank you so much for joining. Now, the title for today is DR, that's the Dominican Republic versus Haiti, Jamaica versus Trinidad and Tobago. Is Caribbean unity dying? Now, we are seeing lots of things happening in the media, and particularly after the I Show Speed Caribbean tour. Now, it's not that we can blame I Show Speed for what has happened and the division that it has created among our different islands, but we must also begin to understand the historical perspective so that we can understand clearly what is happening in the Caribbean today. Now, the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic is best understood as a long historical continuum shaped by colonial rivalry, plantation economics, slavery, war, migration, and uneven state formation on the island of Hispaniola. Now, we must understand, for those of you who don't know, that Haiti shares the same island with the Dominican Republic, and the entire island is known as Hispaniola, La Isla Hispaniola. What is often described today as tension is rooted in centuries of structural political divergence that began under European colonial rule. During the colonial period, the island was split between two competing imperial systems. The Western Third, Saint-Domingue, modern Haiti, became France's most profitable slave colony. So what we call now Haiti was once called Saint-Domingue, and it was France's most profitable colony. Now, so that was built on the backs of many Haitian slaves, right? As we know that, Haiti is mostly populated by people of African descent in the same way that Jamaica is. I mean, Santo Domingo also is populated by people largely of African descent, but they are mixed people of African heritage, if you want to put it that way. So in France's most profitable slave colony built on one of the most brutal plantation systems in the Atlantic world. Its economy depended heavily on the forced labor of enslaved Africans producing sugar, coffee, and indigo for global markets. And when you read, for example, books like C.L.R. James in the what we call now the Black Jacobins, he explained that the French would literally kill allow their slaves to die of labor, right? And then they would replace them. So we find that the Haitian slaves, just like the Jamaican slaves, were constantly being replaced by fresh slaves. So we can understand that there was no continuity in terms of people being born there, people of African descent. They were constantly being replaced because the system was so brutal. The eastern side, Santo Domingo, modern Dominican Republic, remained under Spanish control and was comparatively less economically dynamic, with a weaker plantation system and a smaller enslaved population. All right, because we must know that when the Spanish came to Santo Domingo, they had not found all of the wealth that they were expecting, the gold and the silver and everything that Spain was looking for to enrich its empire. After they went and they explored other territories in Latin America, in the Americas, in the wider Americas, we know that Spain moved on, right? And they left really Santo Domingo hanging. So for years, Santo Domingo was not necessarily very populated, okay? So this divergence is crucial by the late 18th century. Saint-Domingue, that is now modern-day Haiti, had a large enslaved African population and a powerful plantation economy, while Santo Domingo had a more mixed economy and a population structure that was less dominated by large-scale plantation slavery. Okay, so these differences shaped distinct social identities on either side of the island. We have to learn this perspective because a lot of what we're seeing in the modern day Caribbean islands are a result of history, right? Or is a result of what history has left us. The Haitian Revolution from 1791 to 1804 fundamentally altered the island's trajectory. Enslaved Africans in Saint-Domingue, and that is present-day Haiti, successfully overthrew French colonial rule and established Haiti as the first Black republic and the first independent state in Latin America and the Caribbean. So we understand that Haiti represents the first free Black republic, and I would say free independent states. Some people say America was, but we can't say that because America still practiced slavery, right? But we can say that in 1804, Haiti abolished slavery, and slavery could not be practiced anywhere on the island. This revolution also had direct consequences for the eastern side of the island. In 1822, we have Haiti unify the island under its control, governing the entire territory for 22 years. And we know that many Dominicans don't like that, because the fact that they say that they became independent from Haiti is a big sort of stain to them in their history. This period is remembered directly, or differently rather, on each side. In Haiti, it is sometimes seen as a moment of regional unity and abolition, while in the Dominican historical memory, it is often framed as occupation, right? So we have to look at both perspectives, that from the people in Haiti, they see that as unifying the island against colonial imperialism, while in Santo Domingo, in the Dominican Republic, they saw it as occupation. Do you see how, different islands can, from different perspectives, they can look at history from different perspectives? Okay, so we have to look at these things. So when we say that in the Dominican Republic, it's often framed as occupation, particularly due to policies such as land reform and restrictions on certain colonial era privileges. In 1844, the eastern region declared independence as the Dominican Republic. From that point onward, the two states developed separately, but with a persistent undercurrent of mutual suspicion shaped by the memory of Haitian rule, racial ideologies, and competing national narratives. Dominican national identity, particularly in the 19th and 20th centuries, increasingly defined itself in contrast to Haiti, emphasizing Hispanic heritage and distancing itself from the African influence. Haitian identity, meanwhile, was shaped by revolutionary independence and resistance to foreign intervention and debt pressures imposed after independence. All right, so we have to understand these very important history, right? Culturally and socially, the two nations share the same island, but maintain distinct languages, colonial legacies, French, Creole versus Spanish, and national narratives. So these differences are often politicized. And that is what we're seeing happening today, especially in times of economic stress or electoral politics. At the structural level, the tensions between Haiti and the Dominican Republic cannot be separated from their colonial origins. And many of us, we don't understand that history, and we begin to just simplify. But we must understand the history so that we can provide a layered perspective, which oftentimes we don't have. The starkly different plantation systems, the legacy of slavery, the revolutionary rupture in Haiti, and the divergent post-independence development paths created enduring inequalities and identity divisions. Contemporary disputes over migration, labor, and citizenship are layered onto these historical foundations. So in that sense, right, the present day frictions are not simply bilateral disagreements in isolation. They are the residue of colonial partition, slave-based economies, and the uneven aftermath of emancipation and independence. Historical forces that continue to shape how both states see themselves and how each other on the same island. So that is the sort of historical perspective as far as the controversy surrounding Haiti and the Dominican Republic is concerned. Now let's move on to Jamaica versus Trinidad and Tobago. Now this also, so we have in the Hispanic Caribbean territory, right, what we call Latinos, because Haitians are also Hispanics they're not Hispanics, but they're Latinos, right? So the fact of the matter is that we have Haiti and the DR in the Latino, sort of section of the Caribbean territories, right? While in the Anglo-speaking region, we have a rift, a real historical rift between Trinidadians and Jamaicans. Now, this rift might not be based on racial sort of grounding. So let us look at the perspective, the historical perspective of why do we see this continuous rift between these two territories. So we're going to outline right now for you to understand the historical perspective. There is no formal Jamaica versus Trinidad conflict in the sense of a declared political or military confrontation between the two states. So unlike Haiti, where you had Haiti occupying the Dominican Republic for 22 years, you didn't have that thing because, of course, Trinidad and Jamaica don't share the same border. And my God, what if we did? What if Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica shared the same borders? I don't know how that would have ended up. What exists instead is a long-standing pattern of regional rivalry shaped by history, economics, migration, and cultural competition within the English-speaking Caribbean. In historical terms, it is more accurate to describe this as inter-island rivalry and comparative post-colonial development trajectories. During the colonial period, both Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago were British territories, but they developed under different economic structures. Jamaica, larger in population and landmass, was long shaped by plantation sugar production and later a broader agricultural export economy. Trinidad, by contrast, developed by a more diversified colonial economy earlier, particularly after the discovery and the commercialization of oil in the early 20th century. This divergence laid early foundations for differing post-independence economic identities. In the mid-20th century, both territories participated in the short-lived West Indies Federation, and that was from 1958 to 1962, an attempt by British to unify the Caribbean territories into a single political entity. Jamaica's withdrawal from the Federation in 1961 was a decisive moment. Trinidadian political elites, notably around Eric Williams, viewed federation as a viable path to regional unity, while Jamaican political leadership under Alexander Bustamante and significant segments of public opinion feared economic disadvantage and loss of sovereignty. The collapse of the Federation is often cited by historians as a key moment that deepened later perceptions of political divergence between the two islands. After independence, Jamaica in 1962 and Trinidad and Tobago in 1962, the two states pursued distinct economic models. Trinidad and Tobago benefited significantly from hydrocarbon wealth, especially oil and later natural gas, which enabled higher per capita income levels for long periods. Jamaica, lacking comparative or comparable natural resources endowment, leaned more heavily on tourism, bauxite, remittances, and manufacturing, with greater vulnerability to external debt and structural adjustment policies, particularly during the late 20th century. Culturally, both nations became dominant forces in the Caribbean identity formation, but in different eras. Jamaica's global cultural influence expanded through reggae music, Rastafari philosophy, and later dancehall culture. Trinidad and Tobago, meanwhile, exerted strong regional cultural leadership through carnival traditions, calypso, soca, and steel pan innovation. These cultural exports often produced a sense of healthy competition over regional cultural leadership. Sports, especially cricket, further intensified this dynamic. During the West Indies cricket era of global dominance in the 1970s and 1980s, both Jamaica and Trinidadian, or we should say both Jamaican and Trinidadian players, were central to the regional team. However, national loyalties sometimes surfaced and in debates over selection, leadership, and representation, reflecting broader sub-regional identities within the Caribbean project. In the contemporary CARICOM framework, Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago are two of the most influential member states, frequently shaping regional policy debates. Differences occasionally emerge over trade policy, governance of regional institutions, energy pricing, security cooperation, and economic integration. However, these are best understood as policy divergences between leading states rather than existential conflict. In historical perspective, therefore, what is sometimes described as Jamaica versus Trinidad tension is more accurately a layered relationship of what we call now competition and cooperation. Okay, so people, in the Caribbean society, in the culture, we like to compete, and then sometimes we want to dominate, don't we? Rooted in colonial divergence, reinforced by post-independence economic paths, and expressed through culture, sport, and regional diplomacy within a shared Caribbean identity. Now, that was very, very good historical perspective for us to understand and on which we want to develop our conversations because it must be rooted in intellectual discourse. A lot of times, our conversations are rooted in and grounded in gossips and reactions, and we don't understand from whence we are coming. Now, we understand that one of the primary roles of these global elites is to divide and conquer. And so they are doing, and they've been doing this since slavery. And we've always had that rivalry, right, amongst islands, even during slavery. Okay, so we have to understand. And even today, I hear people saying, oh, and Barbados is a jewel of the Caribbean, or Jamaica, or Trinidad and Tobago. We keep on describing ourselves as the jewel, or once was the jewel of the Caribbean. But jewel for whom? Were we jewel for ourselves in terms of building independence for our people, or are we jewels in terms of building for ourselves and for our own people? Yes, of course, we were building for the colonial masters. And that is why they specified us as the jewel of the Caribbean. And we still hold on to these terminologies thinking that we are the best. But they described us as the best in terms of profit, right? That's what we have to understand. So Jamaica provided millions of dollars, Barbados also during slavery for the colonial masters. And we've got to put these into proper perspective and to educate ourselves because there are lots of ignorance in our society today. However, let me just greet you before I begin. Yes, we have Jesus here saying Trinidadians are bad mind fools. Though, we want the discussion to be very respectful and we don't want people calling each other fools and whatever. That is why I began with giving you or cementing the discussion in from an educational, historical, and also intellectual perspective, which here in the region we lack. Now we have here, hello, and I show speed, yes, and then we have, what's this here? Let me see the other persons. We have W, what's this? WWE United. Okay, now let's look at a perspective here and welcome to the show. Make sure you're sharing the live so that we can have a very fruitful discussion here because there's too much ignorance going on in the island and we are going to have a very serious, probably civil war if we do not control our emotions and if we don't educate ourselves. We've got to learn now how to have respectful discourses so that we can understand the root cause of the problems that we are currently confronted by. Very important that we understand that. So let's begin with this young lady from Jamaica who actually opened, I think she lived in the United States. Let me see if I can get this. I'm going to share it with you, her video with you, and let's move on with what some of the things that she's saying about iSpeed Show and his post tour of the Caribbean territory. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you at the moment. Okay, so we're going to look at that. Hopefully I have it right here. Yes, I have. Okay. All right, so okay. Okay. Oh, you're not seeing the video. I'm sorry.
The jokes beneath the memes, and the my island is better than yours, and Jamaicans act too entitled and too proud, and Trinidadians are more cultured. we're all one people shaped by the same history and the same roots. And seeing us in this online civil war fashion, devaluing each other, disrespecting the people of each other's countries, really makes me sad. So we are going to erode Caribbean unity. We are going to ignore the fact that we are one people over virality online and a social media influencer. Every island has its beauty, every island has its values that contribute to the collective strength of the Caribbean region. There is no doubt that Jamaica has risen to global dominance in terms of its influence on culture and music and sports and all the things. And because of that extra light shining on Jamaica, I wonder if there isn't this kind of big sister, overlooked sister dynamics going on where some of the other Caribbean countries resents the fact that Jamaica has so much global influence. And it does not help that we are not humble about it either. But I wonder if there has always been this latent resentment for Jamaica and for Jamaicans. Trinidad has its soca, you have Carnival. Barbados is contributing to like $1 billion kind of global economy. Haiti is like a symbol of revolution and freedom fighters. And instead of saying, when Jamaica wins, the region wins. When Barbados wins, the region wins. Why does Caribbean unity then disappear when one island typically gets a little bit more shine than the others? I honestly don't think I Show Speed came to the Caribbean thinking that this could ever be a byproduct. I thought Caribbean unity was a real thing. Now, Jamaican people were really beginning to see how some people from some of these islands truly feel about us. We as Jamaicans, do we run our mouths? Yes. Do we go off the top with our nationalistic pride and saying we're the capital of the Caribbean and we're the best, etc.? Yes. We are a very unserious set of people. And so we will say many things like that. But at the root of it all, I honestly believe that Jamaican people do have love and respect for our Caribbean brothers and sisters. And to see that some islands are taking this so personally and so seriously and now turning it into something so vile is so unfortunate. Jamaica is just one of those islands that represent Caribbean excellence to the rest of the world. No one can fault us for that. We're better together, people, but not divided. Do you all think that this rivalry is something new, or is it something that has always been there below the surface? Am I the only one sitting here watching how I Show Speed's Caribbean
Oh
tour?
yeah, so we that was, I think, was a very good sort of way to kick off the this I Show Speed event, because when we look at what is happening in the region, we see a lot of what should I say now, divisive comments about who we are as a people, where we are going, and who has the best rum and who has the best cigar. Now, that was the same thing that was done in the DR. I don't know why this thing is not coming. When I share the screen with you, it gives me a lot of things to get back on full track with what I need to do. Wow. I'm not sure why this is presenting itself here. Ah, okay. I might have to come out. Yeah. Okay. You might have to bear with me when I show you something. I'm not sure why it always, there's a strange thing on the screen when I come back up. But yeah, let's talk about this. So we are seeing, since the post what do you call it now, tour of the Caribbean of I Show Speed, that not that I Show Speed is dividing the Caribbean, is that he is what the tour what has shed light, has exposed the divisions, the fractions that we have here in the Caribbean territories. But it's not only happening in the Caribbean, it's also happening in Africa, on the African continent, because people were writing about that after his show or during his show, that was also creating a lot of wounds, divisive wounds in Africa. Okay, and on that point, I want to read you something from an African paper that was written about I Show Speed visit to that territory, and it's coming from Giska. So let me see if I can share this with you and read you some of what and you need to learn. Make sure you're sharing the live And this is a very informative program and something that you need to learn from, because many of you don't want to learn. And then when the Civil War begins, you are going to wonder, where did it come from? Many of you, who is I Show Speed? You didn't know until he presented himself to you. The same thing is going to happen. War is going to present itself amongst us, and we are not going to know from whence it came. Very important that we understand, because some of us are not alert, and the things we think are going to be problematic might not be the things that are going to be problematic. The simple things that we think we should ignore are the simple things that are going to pose serious problems for our respective Caribbean territories. All right, so let me share my screen now and talk about this very important article that was written by this African paper. Hopefully I can, yes. So we have here, let me go, hopefully you will see it. Let me see if I am seeing it on the screen. I'm going to put it on the screen, right, so that you can see it. Are you seeing it? Hopefully you are seeing it. But it's here, says, let me see if I can make the screen bigger, right, just that you can be able to see what I am reading from. Okay, so if I could zoom in more, right, so that hopefully you can see it very well. Now, the title of the article is "The Trouble with Showing the Real Africa," and here we have I Show Speed on top of the article, right? So we have I Show Speed's Africa tour is widely celebrated as respectful and refreshing, yet it operates within a long tradition of racialized spectacle that turns Africa into content and blackness into performance. And that is exactly what the colonial masters have always done. They have always used us as objects, and blackness is always performative. Streamer I Show Speed's Africa tour of 20 countries in 28 days just wrapped, and it has captured the news headlines and social media, producing viral moment after moment. In the process, he generated a lot of applause, particularly from African youth and media, who felt that he engaged Africa and Africans in a respectful manner, atypical of how Westerners tend to approach travel on the continent. However, this conceptualization lacks a critical understanding of not only the content itself, but what it means, what it produces, and what it relies on, and what it ultimately does or doesn't do. But before there can be an analysis of the tour itself, it's important to unpack I Show Speed, real name, that is Darren Watkins Jr. His content can succinctly be described as digital minstrelsy. His exaggerated expressions, hyperactivity, and repeated use of animalistic sounds, including his trademark dog bark, distinguish him from other streamers and are part of the reason he has such a large audience. He blatantly leans into negative stereotypes of Black people, right? The negative stereotypes of Black people, which he did. And this has been demonstrated by him repeatedly eating watermelon, bananas, and chicken in a caricatured manner. That's not even including the time he picked cotton on stream. This is not an exhaustive list, but a snapshot of the nature of his content. Because who is he working for, right? You think he's independent and he's working for himself, but you need to rethink your position. In the process, he has cultivated an audience that not only picks up on the cues of an anti-Blackness, but then feels emboldened to express it. For example, the image of him replicating the jigaboo lips has been used as a meme on TikTok to antagonize other Black content creators. During his European and Asian tours, his fans were more than comfortable veiling racist epithets at him, making dog barks and the monkey sounds at him, which he does himself, so why talk about it if you do it? Or being physically aggressive towards him. And when he is a direct target of racism, he responds with a hostility that is not merely reactive, but performative. And it's almost like when we call ourselves nigger, right? At the same time, we don't want white people to call us nigger, but we calling ourselves nigger, right? Does that make any sense? Okay. These moments are not treated as violations, but a chance to produce virality, where anti-Black violence functions as rage bait. So we're now just content. Black people are just now content, and they're making millions of dollars from us, from our performance. Yet despite all of this, he's not considered a pariah and can still grace the red carpet of the Ballon d'Or Awards. This is because people and corporate brands are unaware or don't care, because these are the corporate brands that control him or are too busy salivating at his numbers. But regardless, what is important to understand is that his content plan is playing up tropes, and Africa is the perfect domain to do so. And the Caribbean, we can say. This logic has precedent. So we have Kony 2012 transformed Uganda into a viral morality play, drawing hundreds of millions of views and donations, while mobilizing a white savior fantasy that produced real political and economic harm on the ground. Now, we don't have to go into that book, but this is why, like, wild, savage, and barbaric can be used interchangeably to describe the land and people occupying it. The constant repetition of stereotypes feeds an existing and insatiable appetite. It is also functional. It works to manage the anxiety produced by the fallacy of racial hierarchies, which would not require such relentless reinforcement if they were stable in the first place. Look, listen to what she says. This writer says, on the surface, it seems that I Show Speed's Africa tour does not deserve to be placed in this category. As he travels, he's inquisitive and amicable, moving through a variety of spaces and encounters. The presentation is plural, and Africa is not reduced to a single homogeneous entity, nor is it just safaris and suffering. However, this does not negate that the content operates within the tradition of organizing Africa in a recognizable representational regime. And then we have this name, Bing Yanga, can't pronounce his name's famous essay, How to Write About Africa, offers a satirical take on the many cliches used to support a colonialist imagination of the continent. In the essay, he writes, so keep your descriptions romantic and evocative and unparticular. Make sure you show how Africans have music and rhythm deep in their souls and eat things no other humans eat. And furthermore, he says, and mention near the beginning of how much you love Africa, how you feel in love with, or how you fell rather, in love with the place and can't live without her. Africa is the only continent you can love. Take advantage of this. I Show Speed follows his script faithfully. At various points, he makes references to how he feels welcomed at home and how the people have been warm and friendly. By comparison, his reception in parts of North Africa and during his European and Asian tours was different, and it was so palpable that various content creators had conversations about the racism in these places on his behalf. But it's important to note that he's not participating in the discourse. I Show Speed is not participating in the discourse. Even when he was in the Dominican Republic, he was not participating in the discourse in the sort of conflict between Haitians and Dominicans. He does not, because he knows where his bread is buttered. So he's not going to participate in the discourse, but he will sort of go to the discourse and make you and rev you up into fighting against each other, but he is not going to participate in that discourse. Throughout the tour, he teases his audience that he will be doing a DNA test to further validate the connection he feels to the continent. One moment he'll say that he's part Angolan, the next moment he's Ghanaian, and at the end emphatically claims that he is 100% African. This is not the only time he has made reference to such in his content. In a past conversation with NBA champion Giannis Antetokounmpo, the very difficult to call this name, he lays out his bloodline, claiming he is a mixture of Portuguese, Angolan, and Finnish heritage. Two major things worth flagging here. First, there is a romanticization of Africans, as he has also romanticized us as perpetually jubilant, sociable, and indigenous. To quote Wayana again, African characters should be colorful, exotic, larger than life, but empty inside with no dialogue, no conflicts or resolutions in their stories, no depth or quirks to confuse the cause. The representation oscillates between casting Black African people as subhuman and superhuman and strips them of the capacity to be understood as multi-dimensional individuals. And we did not see that also in the Caribbean, or we saw that where that was happening. All right, just happy-go-lucky citizens. Secondly, the DNA talk ventures into the territory of race science. Ancestral DNA testing is one big scam that flattens complex histories of migration and takes socially constructed identities and then maps them onto biology. It's as if red blood cells are encoded with GPS coordinates. By presenting identity this way, the content inadvertently legitimizes racial categories as well as the social and political implications they carry. Okay, now let me look at another problem with the show. All right, and we're trying to make now the connection also with the Caribbean. Make sure you're watching, you're liking, and you are sharing. Another problem with iShow's Speed Store and the reactions it elicited is the framing of his content as showing the real Africa. It puts into question the idea of authenticity itself and what expressions are deemed valid, what is not, and the tropes that exist in between. A common feature of the tour is his visits to villages and participation in various cultural traditions. In the context of tourism, these activities would be labeled cultural tours, which package and sell local practices as consumable experiences. In this logic, culture becomes a spectacle where songs, dances, and other traditions are taken out their original context and are reupholstered as a performance for iShow Speed and his audience. Typically, during his introductions, there are people in the background already positioned, waiting and ready for instruction. This cannot be a representation of a lived reality of if it is being staged, right? So the people are not just going to a Haitian voodoo camp. They're not going to show you what they do in the real life. They will show you the stereotypical understanding of what Haitian voodoo is, right? But they're not going to reveal lots of what they do in real life. So it is staged. Very important that you understand that. It is a very difficult undertaking to present African traditions without reproducing familiar racist schemas. The attempt to separate the two requires nuance and sophistication, which is what we're trying to do here. And many of you, we don't understand the history of the Caribbean, even though we live in the region, and that is going to cause a lot of problem. But that is not iShow Speed's mandate. Now, some of it is not entirely his fault. He cannot control for a viewership coming to the content with a lifetime's worth of anti-Blackness installed. He can't control that, neither can he correct it. But to reflect an image back that aligns with a pre-existing framework, unmediated, inevitably reinforces those stereotypes. And there is a tacit acknowledgement from iShow Speed of the landmine he is stepping on. During his visit to the Himba tribe in Namibia, he disabled the live chat comments on the YouTube stream, anticipating the types of responses that would appear. Yet this precaution did not alter the overall approach of his content. On Twitch and in the comments, viewers still interpreted Himba live as simplistic. One chat member called them cannibals, while a large subset focused on the women's exposed breasts. These reactions highlight the problem with the content as it falls into the trap of reducing culture and also sexualizing Black women's body. Very well said. To be clear, not all women in iShow Speed's content are depicted in sexualized or servile ways, but there are instances where this is undeniable. For example, his hand-fed by women in Ethiopia. He participates in a what you call fake lobola exchange for a girl barely out of her teens in Eswatini. He approaches a South African girl who is visibly uncomfortable during the interaction. And finally, Ghana offers a double whammy. First, a woman being presented as a prize after a race, and the viral image of women massaging him to open and close the stream. In these specific cases, the women are positioned primarily as objects for his attention. These stand in stark contrast to his interactions with European and Asian women. Okay? Very important that we also look at these differences. Even when visiting Bangkok's red light district, a space that is packaged with sexual connotations, he does not exploit the opportunity. The scantily dressed women are largely ignored, and the camera does not linger on them. When he does receive a massage rather, in Thailand during the day, it is with older women and there is minimal skin exposure. So the article here is giving us a difference between how women are treated for content in Asia versus in Africa. This removes the potential for sexualization typically associated with Thai massages. The paradox is clear. The tropes are right there and fully available in Thailand, and yet he reserves the most sexually charged depiction for Ghana. Okay, so who controls whom? Do you think that this is deliberate, or do you think that this is staged? Very important that you ask these questions. These disparities are not trivial. The consequences for Black women carry historical and social weight. Depicting them rather in this manner invokes stereotypes of them as hypersexual, bestial, or Jezebels, which is a maneuver that has been used to justify their sexual exploitation, mutilation, and violation. So throughout the tour and in its aftermath, commentators celebrated Aisho's speed for rehabilitating the image of Africa. The irony here is comedic. Africans who have spent decades critiquing outsiders claiming authority over their stories are effectively giving a Westerner the baton of representing their continent. And what does Aisho's speed actually do? He skims the surface, lightly touches on the impact of colonization, and has some curated interactions, while his African audience fills in the gaps for him and does the interpretive heavy lifting. Recruiting someone whose career is built on being a conduit for anti-Blackness with the monumental job of changing perception shaped by centuries of colonialism and slavery is laughably absurd. He can't do that, right? Furthermore, he's not even educated to do that. He's not prepared intellectually to do that, okay? Neither emotionally. The idea that this is even remotely plausible borders on satire. The joke writes itself. We're always a laughing stock to the world, and we do so voluntarily. More importantly, the argument is a fundamental misdiagnosis of the situation. It believes that Africa suffers from bad PR and that can be rectified. This assumes the symptom is the problem while completely ignoring the violent structural cause, right? And that is often what we do. To echo Frank B. Wilderson III, Black people are the center of the world and not in a good way, right? Black people are the center of the world and not in a good way. The world is dependent on the humiliation, degradation, and destruction of Africa and its people, not just from an economic standpoint, but socially, environmentally, sexually, politically, physically, and metaphysically. There is no rehab for that. Therefore, it becomes ridiculous to believe that a singular content creator could undo more than a millennium-old structural addiction. To truly change the negative image and stereotypes of Africa would mean that the world would forego its reliance on anti-Blackness because it pays, right? The whole anti-Blackness pays. And that would require a complete collapse of modern civil society as we know it. And that revolution won't be streamed on YouTube. right? That is something, that's a very beautifully written piece. We must, really give this person who wrote this piece an A, right, for putting that into proper perspective. We have here, sorry, WWE is a wrestling franchise I Show Speed did, episode, okay. As a Tobagonian, Trinidadian, I love all my Caribbean brothers and sisters, and so all of us should do that. And we have here that the World Wrestling Entertainment, that is the WWE, have a history with I Show Speed. Well, that article was beautifully written and encapsulates what we are also going through here in our Caribbean experience. I still have to come out. Do I have to come out? Because this thing is not going to give me the thing I want to. I don't know why I'm. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back. I was, Okay, so what we're seeing here is that as the article says, we are not going to have the revolution on YouTube, right? If we are going to have a revolution of anti-blackness, of anti-colonialism, of anti-imperialism, it's not going to happen on YouTube. Okay, and we know, for example, that the algorithm is going to support iShow's feed because he's doing the bidding of the colonial masters. So when we here in the Caribbean are so caught up with one young man, whether it's me or it's somebody else, one person's opinion on who has the best KFC or who has the best or whatever, the best food, the best music, that is ridiculous. And it shows how much education that we also have. How are we going to allow one person, right, without much education, to determine who we are? Why are we going to actually lower ourselves to a standard where we think that we are just content, okay, and we're not people who are serious? Why are we sitting down and laughing at a young man jumping, on a, a counter in a patty shop or whatever shop in KFC? Why are we doing that to ourselves and saying that we're proud of that? All right? When we should be self-respecting, we should be people who have some amount of discipline, some amount of, personality. Shouldn't we have culture in the Caribbean? Or are we now degrading ourselves and acting as monkeys, as they would like to think we are? Right? Because what civilized society, somebody's going to jump a counter to greet the person who has sold him something, right? But okay, we're going to allow it because this person is, very important. Now, what do you think about the division we have here in the Caribbean? Let's now get into the conversation. And I've spoken enough, so let me go down into the conversation. What do you think? What is contributing to this island rift? Because you know what's going to happen is going to end up that we are going to be divided and we are going to be conquered. I think we've already been conquered, if you should ask me, but I think it's going to get worse because our people are just not literate enough to understand what is happening in the world and who controls what. So people are still thinking that iShow Speed is in control and that he's controlling what he's doing. But why are we having this rift? Why do you think there was so much rift during the iSpeed show, the iShow Speed's tour of the Caribbean? Why? First, we're seeing it with Haiti and the Dominican Republic, right? And we are seeing where even the young man that was presented in the video, that he was actually, I understand he was relieved from his position here in the DR, that the one who actually called iShow Speed and said, when are you coming to Haiti? I understand that man was relieved. He was fired from his work for even showing the Haitian flag and for, putting the cameras on Haiti, on Dominican soil. So we know that something is wrong and something is amiss here. Now, as the writer of the African piece suggested, these things happened on camera, but of course, iShow Speed is not going to participate in the discourse. He'll just leave the mess and we will have to deal with it. All right? And certainly, whatever light that was shone on the Caribbean region of course, the global elites, the tourism sector, and these multi-billionaires and millionaires are the ones who are going to profit. Okay? Not us. We are just doing the mere entertaining. And didn't we entertain them? And that is what. But do we see ourselves as just entertainers, or are we slaves in the Caribbean? Okay? Because when we think that we are the best entertainers for our colonial masters, that's essentially what we're saying, you know. When we're saying that we're the capital of the Caribbean, Jamaica likes to say, oh, we are the capital of the Caribbean. Capital for whom? What do you control? What does Jamaica own? Nothing. Right? We saw during also the I Show Speed's tour of Jamaica that you saw Beanie Man and you saw the Sean Pauls and these so-called global icons, and they were just at his feet. They were like his servants. And you really, who controls whom? Right? And these are some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves. But we don't want to ask ourselves the hard question. We just want to think that we are in control because we are in the limelight. But let me just say something to you for those of you who haven't studied the history. Black people or people of African descent have always been the entertainers. The slaves entertained their masters on the slave plantation, right? And after slavery, many of them, that's why we have African Americans being so very, outstanding as far as entertainment is concerned. Because that is what they were given. That was where they were given, or the place that they were given to shine. Through entertainment, acting, singing, all of that, sports. They never wanted us in their intellectual seats. They never wanted us in their economic, what you call it now, corporations. We should just be in our line, stay in our lane. And our lane is entertainment through sports and music and food. And that's exactly what we did. And we were on the, showcase ourselves to I Show Speed, which was anything great. But we think because the world is looking at us, right? The world is looking at us, we think we feel important, right? And that is where we need to get our acts together, okay? But we're not going to get our acts together. Black on black fighting is white people entertainment, absolutely. That's what they're doing. And as you said this, Paul Bunyan, I remember that in history, do you know that one of their entertainments, the colonial masters, as the slave masters, came and brought the slaves to the Caribbean and possibly to North America, that one of their entertainment was to sit and watch dogs. When I say ferocious dogs, eat the slaves alive while they're having dinner. Right? That was one of their pastimes. Okay? And these are the descendants of their children that you see controlling I Show Speed. Don't think for one moment that I Show Speed controlled the narrative. He didn't. Right? He did not control the narrative. Yeah. And those of you who want to go off because you love I Show Speed and you are his, I Show Speed of God, then fine. But I have to speak the truth. And you are going to find yourselves in a very, very, very much, troubling manner and terrible manner, because what is happening in the Caribbean now is foolishness. Foolishness. And it's amazing to see that many people who even should be more educated and sophisticated fell for the deception. And now we are left with a Caribbean that is in total chaos and in total, division. All right? And many of us lack the historical understanding, the historical knowledge of where this division is coming from. The root cause of this division. Why are we divided? Why do we think that we are the better and the best and the whatever? How is that helping us to grow? How is that helping the ordinary man on the streets, right, to build him or herself? It is not. In fact, the ordinary man is also questioning the leaders and saying, how is it that you allow somebody to come and jump our counter, right? How do you allow that to happen? And yet still, we in our country cannot do that. And had we done that, we would have been disciplined. How do you do that? It suggests here that even our leaders are slaves. Okay, and they're probably in a better position because they are closer to the slave masters, as you have your house slaves and the field slaves. Okay, but our leaders also, they settled for it and they submitted to it and to the agenda. And right now, if we do not control the narrative, we are going to find a Caribbean that is going to go backward instead of forward in terms of our unity. That is what we have to understand. All right, so let's now hear from you and what you have to say in terms of what do you think? Do you think that it is possible? Caribbean unity is possible? Do you think Caribbean unity is possible? Yeah, let me hear from you. I think I've said enough. You need now to show me what you're thinking. I have said my piece, so please let me hear from you. Do you think Caribbean unity is possible? Or do you think that we are heading for what might become a war amongst us? My optimism, Caribbean scapegoats built by Elon Musk, but we have to be careful of Moon, Mars, indentureship. Yes, Caribbean unity is possible. Okay, now somebody was saying that Caribbean unity is, we should fight for Caribbean unity, but we can't be unified if we don't want the truth. And one of the things that I realized about our Caribbean people, we don't want to hear the truth. We want that which sounds good. We prefer to entertainment over thinking. Anything that is entertainment is what we are going to be running for. Drama-like conversations. We don't want structured, very difficult conversation, complex conversation that we're having right now. We don't want to discuss these things. Now, if we don't discuss these things, how are we going to be unified? We're not going to be unified. We've got to have the difficult conversations. All right? And the difficult conversations is that which we're not having. We cannot be united under lies. We cannot be united under half-truths. We cannot be united under propaganda, right? And the I Show Speed and everything that he did was just mere propaganda. It was not truth. It was not cementing Caribbean realities and the difficult conversations and discourses that we should be having. And that is where we find ourselves. So do I think there's going to be Caribbean unity? No. And it's not because I don't want it, it's because I know that we too don't desire to be unified because we just don't want to hear the truth. We want more to cement our understanding. And another thing is that we depend on our leaders for unity when we ourselves, we ourselves are not united. Okay, we can't blame Mrs. Kamala Person-Besessor for lack of unity in the Caribbean, right? We also have to blame ourselves. How are we educating ourselves? And we are in a better position than the slaves of yesteryear because we're freer now and we can read a book or two to understand history and to see what is happening in the news. We are more mobile. We have mobile phones, right? But we're not using them for the right purposes. We're more using them to trace each other off and to talk about nonsensical matters. And that's the problem, right? Because this live here now should be generating hundreds and thousands of people if we're really serious about Caribbean unity, but we're not. Yes, so we have to, yes, so you're saying, yeah, we need to have serious discourses. And I think one of the problems that we're having too is that history is no longer taught the way it should be taught in schools. Okay, people are just remembering dates and they think that they are bright. They go and they teach dates and just the narratives. But there's no, what you call it now, interpretation, no analysis, no proper analysis of history. And if we don't know where we are coming from, then we are not going to be able to understand where we are and where we are going. And I think the large majority of us don't know where we are and hence cannot say where we're going. And as a result of that, we are already defeated before we even started. Before we even start the race, we have been defeated by these so-called global powers that control the internet, that control entertainment. And that is what we have to understand. Let me see. We have to try unity, but you may be right, Andrew. Yes, we have to try. It's not we should. And that is why we are here, even though we don't have many people, we're here to give of the best and to see how we can educate. But it doesn't mean, therefore, that the majority are going to listen, and that is why we're going to be. That's why we're going to lose. We're going to lose, just like the pandemic. We're going to lose, and we continue to lose because the global population is largely brainless. So we have here, bring back British monarchy rule if Caribbean unity not possible. Well, I think that we already have the monarchy, but the monarchy in a very different way, right? It's not the way in which we are accustomed, but or presidents or prime ministers or monarchs, in the true sense of the word, right? In the true sense of the word, they just replaced the British monarchy, and you have the Jamaican monarchy, or perhaps the Trinidad monarchy, the Barbadian monarchy, all right, with our black people being there as on top of what is happening. And that's another, to talk about the black monarchy, we need to understand that we were just replaced, or leaders were just replaced with black faces, right? They're no different from the British monarchy or the French monarchy. What is happening in Haiti, okay, is no different from when the French probably controlled them, or if you should have a visible American face in Haiti. All right, no difference. We are under American monarchy. Example, Monroe Doctrine. Absolutely, yeah. We are. But when I say British monarchy, I meant that the monarchy, right? So because you said the British monarchy, I said, well, we're still under it. But the fact of the matter is that it is what it is. We need to get now to understand, how are we going to organize ourselves around education, around cultural norms that helps to elevate us and not to demean us, as we're seeing happening in the wider world right now. Okay, because that our Caribbean territories are so caught up with one 21-year-old man suggests that something is happening. Something wrong has been happening in the Caribbean for many years. How are we going to correct it? I don't know. I think entertainment has long taken away from us the cultural norms that we used to have, the traditional norms, the traditional values that we used to have. The culture has destroyed the sort of what we call subculture, right? Has destroyed us. And right now, we are just kicking our way, but very soon we're going to find out that what we're seeing, what we're witnessing, what is happening in the Caribbean is something that is going to destroy us. And I think that we are on the verge of destruction. We are destroying ourselves. We are destroying ourselves. Okay. Now, I've given you the historical perspective on Haiti and the Dominican Republic. What do you think happened the other day as you watched the video in terms of Haitians and the struggle between Haiti and the Dominican Republic? Do we have any Haitians online? And what do you think is the problem? And how do you think Haitians and Dominicans can solve that sort of deep rift between both islands? How do you think that can be accomplished? Let me hear from you. Or do you want me to end the chat? I can end the live now. I have things to do. If you don't want to talk with me, I can end the chat and move on. Yeah, most entertainment industry has failed us, but we need more Caribbean comedians to use uncomfortable truth in jokes and skits. Absolutely. Yeah, but we don't want to also, it'll be good, but we don't also want to laugh too much, because a lot of entertainments will also help to kill the truth. That we need to also speak truth with some amount of seriousness. But you're right. If you could have also truth mentioned in skits, even though sometimes we find that we will laugh away what is serious and then we don't take it seriously, okay, when it should be taken seriously. But you're right. I agree 100% with you. Bring back, somebody saying British monarchy rule. Are you for real? Yeah, well, the fact of the matter is that I think he might have been sarcastic in terms of bringing back British monarchical rule. But the fact is that when we look at what is happening, though, that is Maria. I really wonder, what do we prefer in the Caribbean? Do we prefer freedoms? Do we prefer democracy? Or do we prefer dictatorship? Because freedom seems to have destroyed us, where we find ourselves doing everything that we think is we can do, and then we're destroying ourselves. Okay, so you really, really wonder, what do we really want? Do we really, are we seriously responsible? Are we going to take liberties responsibly? Or are we going to throw away our rights because we want to do whatever we want to do, and then dictatorship is going to come? And that's what always happens, you know. When we now move into freedom and we begin to do whatever we want to do, values collapse, right? And then what happens? You have the what you call it now, the ascension of a dictator. That is what is going to happen. So eventually we're moving back to that. We're going to have to move back to colonialism. We will have to move back to dictatorship and authoritarianism. That is for sure. The Caribbean will have to move back to that, because the culture is so low now that I don't think that we are going to be governments. They're already telling us about the crime, right? Crime in Trinidad, crime in Jamaica, right? And that is coming from the low values that we have, the substandard value that we have in society nowadays. They're going to have to say that we might have to go under dictatorship. And already we're fast becoming police states, okay, as a result of our low values. Okay, so that is what is happening in the Caribbean right now. And people are not having, until these things come upon us, then we don't want to have the conversation. Then we begin to cry and scream, right? But it is what it is. Any other comment? Why do you think we are divided? I think I have spoken enough. I have given you the historical perspective. You will now have to give me what is your thoughts on your mind. And then we can end the live. Good for me also, can go and get some rest. All right, thank you so much for joining. I don't think you want the conversation, so I'm not going to force you into having a conversation that needs to be had. So you can share the live with those who want to be shared. Maybe it will be up and people can watch it. If there is no other question, no other comment, then I will just move on to do what I need to do. If SpaceX starts building Caribbean space sports, this can unify the Caribbean, as space sports is evolution of airports, the training for our youths and education. You know, let us now say something about, a very important point you're raising, dog food. What a name to have, though. Yeah, very important thing you're raising here. But let's not think that education is going to unite us, or some technology is going to unite us, or mode of transportation is going to unite us. Okay, as I'm saying, its values will have to unite us, right? And common truths, right? When we have all of these, people are thinking that if you have some airplane here, or you have CARICOM, or you have all of these economic, unified system of economic trade, that we're going to be unified. These things can't unify us. We saw where when we're going to have the CSME, that was the time that we saw the division in the Caribbean. Remember when that came into being some years ago, and we saw where each territory started to fight against each other and all of that stuff. So it is more education and conversations that what I'm having that will unify us, and that will help. Well, at least attempt to. It might not unify us, but attempt to, because if we understand each other, we understand each other's history, culture, and all of that thing, then I think from that perspective, we might be able to say, yes, there's some attempt to unify us. But we can't be unified, certainly, on the just modes of transport technology. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Or a global entertainer like I Show Speed coming to the Caribbean and showcasing us. That is not going to unify us. All right? We have to be unified under the banner of truth, under the banner of truth and education, which in the Caribbean here we don't have. We have schooling, but we don't have education. And that's the problem we're having here. Any other, how can we be unified? Why are we so disunited? Thought you'd have loved this conversation, but it seems I'm wasting my time. Yes. We have to. Yeah. There's no other way. There's no other way. It's like in the United States now, they're not having the difficult conversations around the military-industrial complex and how the United States is an empire. As a result of that, the United States is going to crumble right before American eyes because they're not having the uncomfortable conversations about the empire, right? And what the empire has done in the world. So we in the Caribbean have to have the uncomfortable truth about what is happening in the Caribbean, in spite of the fact that we might not like what we hear, we might not like what we see, but we've got to have these discussions, as very difficult as they might be. Have them. We need them, right? Why are Dominicans, why do they hate Haitians? Or why do Haitians have a difficult time interacting with Dominicans, Jamaicans, and Trinidadians? Why? We must ask these questions. I want to hear from you. Why do you think that we can't live in a unified Caribbean? What is causing it from happening? Do you think it's because of national pride or lack of education? Or it's just that we're haters. We don't like each other because I'm different and you're different. Why? Let's begin with Trinidadians versus Jamaicans. Why do we have that beef, this ongoing beef? I did give you some historical understandings, but from your own perspective, from your own reality, from what you're living, why? Or is it that we don't have any beef, but social media is actually amplifying? Because that's another thing. Is social media amplifying the beef that these so-called Caribbean territories have? Is it true, or is it just social media doing it and it's not really real? But somehow our leaders might want us to be divided and is creating that division. What do you think? Ladies and gentlemen, you're joining the live. Today we're looking at DR versus Haiti, Jamaica versus Trinidad. Is Caribbean unity dying? That is what we're looking at for this afternoon's program. You're not wasting your time. I'm taking in the knowledge. Thank you so much. Yes, and thank you so much. We just want to have more people that they will, because if we don't have enough people, YouTube just kills the video. That's what they do. Right. So why do you think social media is actually amplifying the discourse that we are having? Not the discourse, the disputes that we're having, not the discourse, but the disputes that we're having. Do you think social media is provoking us to war against each other when we need to unite so that we can be able to fight against the challenges that are afflicting our society at the moment? Yeah, so we have these divisions are ancient techniques, as you said, Andrew. India, for example, the Indian history of that is the Sultanates, then to the Mongols and British, we can learn rather that history reflects the Caribbean history of patterns. Absolutely. And I think that what we need to understand, that history is our instructor. History is our lesson book so that we can learn from history so that we will be able to chart a better path. We can move forward knowing that these things happened and we need to learn from them. But oftentimes we're not learning from history, so we continue to repeat the same mistakes. And what is very paradoxical is that many of us, in the generation that comes after, tend to believe that we are more knowledgeable. And that is what is ironic. We tend to think that, so Generation X, of which I belong, then you have the millennials, then you have all the other generations that came after, they think that they are more knowledgeable than previous generations, and they are not. Okay, and then that begins now to create problems because we do not pass on traditions anymore. We no longer pass on traditions, and then we end up fighting against each other when we need to create more unity so that we can fight against our common enemies. Years ago, there was a newspaper columnist from Jamaica, and he wrote an article on the DR and Haiti. And he mentioned in his article that these two countries need to work together if they are going to survive. And he said to me, Andrew, I got some hate comments, lots of hate comments, because he said that they need to work together as one. And this is what is happening to a large extent. It might not be as hateful from India, from Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica, but there are some very deep wounds that we have to deal with and conversations that we must have. So that's why I'm trying now to initiate that conversation so that we can be able to prevent what might happen in the future. Okay? Because it is not pretty. Now, I'm asking, is social media contributing to it? Do we think that sometimes it could be bots? Because remember now we have this thing, everybody's talking about this bots. In Santo Domingo, for example, when I Show Speed came here, they were saying Alofoke, who is a media communicator, whatever, specialist here in the DR. I understand that he botted the live of I Show Speed and said that he had 1.9 concurrent live viewers when he didn't have. Do you think that some of the hateful comments that we see online that are dividing us could be bots, and people are stimulated by them, are being moved by them, and it can result in very deep divisions among our Caribbean territories? What do you think? These are some of the questions we want to ask. These are some of the difficult questions that we need to pose, because in fact, there are bots, and lots of what we think are views are bots. And that is what is real. That's the question. What is really real in this world? Because our world is becoming artificial day by day, more so artificial day by day. Okay? So what do you think? Let's begin with Trinidad and Jamaica. Why? Why do we have this rift? Why do we have this rift? I've given you the historical perspective. Do you want me to repeat some of those perspectives that for those of you who are joining the live, we are looking at the title, DR versus Haiti, Jamaica versus Trinidad, is Caribbean unity dying? And I gave you a very brief perspective, historical perspective, and we say the relationship between Haiti and the Dominican Republic is best understood as a long historical continuum shaped by colonial rivalry, plantation economies, slavery, war, migration, and uneven state formation on the island of Hispaniola. And I gave also a very brief historical perspective on the rift between Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica. And I said here that there is no formal Jamaican versus Trinidad conflict in the sense of a declared political or military confrontation between the two states. So let us make that very clear. What exists instead is a long-standing pattern of regional rivalry shaped by history, economics, migration, and cultural competition within the English-speaking Caribbean. And this is what we are here to explore, to assess, to examine, to see if we can use our minds to come up with some of the root causes and what is really creating these problems, these Caribbean and West Indian problems. Why? Why do we have rifts? Why can't we have unity? And we're not saying everybody's going to be united, but we are seeing old wounds beginning to come back, to surface. Greetings, Stadex. Yeah, we're looking at Stadex. We're looking at the whole: is DR versus Haiti, Jamaica versus Trinidad, is Caribbean unity dying? And we are saying, why are we having beef? Why are we seeing the proliferation and the resurgence of old wounds that we think had died but are now resurfacing? Why? Why is it? And we're trying to have this very important discussion this evening. Please share the live so that we can get in other people and we can have a lively discussion, because we need this video to be sent out. Too many of our videos are being killed in the studios because the algorithm doesn't desire to share them. So you are the ones who have to share them. So we have first question, that is what stated. First question, how would we define Caribbean? Very good. How do we define Caribbean unity? What is unity? Well, I would define Caribbean unity in the sense that understanding that we're different and respecting our differences rather, that we do understand that differences don't mean that we are inferior. Differences don't mean that I hate you. It's just that I'm different and I might like my curry chicken done in a different way than you like it, right? I might like a certain soca music, then I might like dancehall music. But it doesn't mean, therefore, that we are at loggerhead or that we should be, at war. But what we're seeing now is a Caribbean that is totally disunited, saying one is saying we are the capital of the Caribbean, another saying no, we are, and nobody's the capital of the Caribbean, by the way, right? Because we all have different things to contribute. So that's what if we understand that in our differences, we need our differences in order to survive and also to build, right, and to help each other. So what you don't have, I have, and then we build on that. That's what I mean by unity. But we'll never have unity in terms of we're agreeing on every point. That is what I mean by unity. I think it's at least 5 new world orders competing. We don't even know the unions of these two, but Caribbean love is strong. Unite. Yeah, we're lovely people. We're lovely people. But one of the things that I find, Dog Food, is that we unite when it comes on to entertainment. That's the only time we find ourselves, even in Jamaica, right? Even in Jamaica, Jamaicans unite when it comes on to a football match or some entertainment. But under more serious issues like political discourses, under which we should be uniting, because that is how we need leaders to lead us and to guide us, to guide the nation along. We don't, right? So under I show speed entertainment, then we will unite, okay? But well, we didn't unite that definitely this time. But the fact of the matter is that we unite under entertainment than under serious discourses. I don't recall as many riffs except when they are racial, example, Haiti versus Trinidad, DR, or Trinidad versus Guyanese. Yes, but we do have riffs though, because sometimes when you have other Caribbean territories, do you remember the CSME and the fact that many people from other territories were complaining that they were discriminated against in respective Caribbean territories? So we do have a rift when it comes on to economic policies or political, policies. There are rifts. We can't deny that, and in some cases now we're seeing cultural rifts. We're seeing now that is surfacing, where people are beginning to think that their music is the best. And by the way, let's understand that music is something that it transcends culture. And because we came here from Africa, from India, from different parts of the world, from the Middle East, we came here with our different music genres. And people also moved along. So Trinidadians moved to Barbados or to Guyana, Guyana to Barbados. Then we brought those musical things with us. Jamaica, for example, learned a lot from, African-American music. So we can't say that any of our musical genres is pure, right? We might have developed some of the sounds from other music and we merged it with our own indigenous sounds and created a different vibrant sound. So we don't now think that because reggae belongs to Jamaica or Jamaica says belongs to her or soca to Trinidad, that it was, nobody, influenced, we all influenced each other. That's my point. We all influenced each other, and we should not think that all of us own whatever, because music is transcendental, right? It transcends culture, and we know that. Yes, I agree with that. And we have Static is saying, ironically, Caribbean people seem more unified in places like Brooklyn, Toronto, London. Absolutely. This is a very crucial point that Static is making. Yes, that is where we tend to unite. Why? Because we know that we are minorities and that they see us as islanders. And that is what I would like to say to our Caribbean natives here, that in America, all right, they're just seeing us as islanders. In Europe, they're just seeing us as some islanders. They don't see us as specifically as Jamaicans and Trinidadians and, and Guyanese and all of that. Oh, where are you from? The Caribbean? And they might say, oh, are you from Jamaica? But it's not because they want to dominate your island or to overlook your island. It's because that is what is in their repertoire, right? But they don't see us as different, okay? And that is what we have to understand. Whether you're Indian or you are black or you are white, okay, if you say that you are from the Caribbean, they are going to just look at you as an islander. So we unite because we have to come together to fight oppression. And that's a very good point. So in the Caribbean, we tend to be more comfortable, not understanding that we are too small to do it by ourselves. WHZ saying the economic rift with Trinidad and Grenada is not very wide. Okay, good. Well, I'm happy that is good. Is it? And then we have OPPJ is saying democracy is an experiment. We should see ourselves as great, and competition breeds jealousy, just like religion. Everyone thinks they are separate. The tribe of Issachar rather, was small, but they was a, yeah. Okay, you're right. You're right. I think everybody's going to say that there, and nothing is wrong if you're saying I'm the best, because it's good to have competition, right? What we don't want it to lead down into is the name callings, right? And all of this emotional negativity that we're seeing on social media right now. But certainly nothing is wrong with saying I'm the best. Sometimes you're doing math, right? And you might think I am the best math student in the class. So nothing is wrong with, having some amount of competition, but we should not allow it to be converted into spewing racial epithets and other things at people. In Europe, in the Schengen borders, you can drive over border without being searched. In any way, what would be the CARICOM version of that? Yeah, that's going to be serious. Somebody was saying that if we have, these intermodal means of transport, that we would be unified. But I was saying that that might not be true, because how much are we educated about each other? Would that create more rift, as we saw with the implementation of the CSME? And we saw where lots of hatred, that people were saying, go back to your country. And some people were physically abused by immigration authorities, so we have to speak some of the truth. And that's why I thought this conversation was necessary and that we would have been more involved. Dogfood is saying podcasters can unite us Caribbean people. Example, Chris must list. Is that Chris? Must list us great soul. Ever should look at Andrew and Chris must versus I Should Speed. Yeah, I would think that if the podcasters were not just looking for views, but they're looking to telling the truth and to engaging in deep intellectual conversations, yes, then they could help to unite the Caribbean. But unfortunately, we're living in a world, including on YouTube, where the algorithm is what they have to give, what the algorithm responds to, and not necessarily what is the truth. Okay, the algorithm only promotes that which it wants to promote, and only you can help to push it. You can also have the algorithm to push the algorithm to push out the content, but then again, the algorithm chooses selectively what it wants the global population to know. Then we have here, let me get here, we have StateX. We have no Caribbean version because we have no strong cargo passenger boats or planes that link us economically or socially. Yeah, we don't have those. And because we have been also colonial, we are under colonialism, and we're used to that division and the hatred because we think that we're in competition for, who is better, who England or the United States regards as better, then I think that to some extent that we are worse than what we have in Europe. It's almost like we're acting for our colonial masters, and we want to be good boys and girls, right, for our colonial masters. So, for example, Barbados is Little England, right? So she has to preserve that status. And to have other Caribbean islands coming there could interrupt Barbados from maintaining her status as Little England. Right? So these are the things that we're looking at. The Dominican Republic, on the other hand, they see Haitians as Africans, and they are Europeans, they are Hispanics. So when they have Haitians interacting with Haitians, mean that they are Africanizing their culture, which means therefore that they are debasing it. Okay, and these are the things that we also have to examine, and that's why we're looking at some of the history. Very good point, though. Then we have here, Status is saying, I would suggest a Caribbean summer camp, students of each nation going to another nation to get to know the people. You're correct. And in addition to that, we should have study abroad. They should have regular study abroad programs where, different grades, you can go to different parts of the islands, right, to be able to understand how we are similar yet different. And nothing is wrong with being different and diverse. Okay, but the more we educate ourselves and appreciate each other's differences and similarities, then we'll begin to love ourselves, right? Now, ignore Christmas list. He lies. Okay, who is Christmas list? I've never heard of Christmas list before. Then we have Dog Food is saying Christmas list get locked up in Trinidad. National embarrassment. Andrew do collaboration with Christmas list. Who is he? I would have to go on YouTube and research him. First, I'm hearing that name. Christmas list is dangerous for Trini culture. Who is Christmas list? What does he do? He's a podcaster. Yeah. So we are looking at that fact, and we're looking at the fact that we have to recognize that we are different, right? But our differences is where our strengths lie. In our differences, that's where our strengths lie. And that's where, as a region, we can be powerful. We can be powerful. And there's nothing as powerful when the region, when we're in the States and you see a Barbadian, a Jamaican, a Trinidadian, Tobagonian, Grenadian, Guyana, Guyanese, all of these Caribbean territories come together and pull their influence. Nothing as strong Caribbean unity, how we produce great things, right? We can do the same thing in the region, but we ought not to do it because we tend to be too island-centric, which is not very good. WHZ saying Christmas list is a YouTuber out to destroy. Wow, TNT. I wonder why he would like to do that. Yes, I'm not, first time I'm hearing about it. So I will have to go online and see what he is talking about. Yeah, so this is what we are discussing this evening. What do you think about the DR and Haiti? What do you think about the DR, that's the Dominican Republic, and Haiti? By the way, we need to also have a discussion about Haiti and how do we in the Anglo-speaking Caribbean treat Haiti? Because sometimes we also just look at the DR, but how do the English-speaking Caribbean territories, how do they treat Haitians? Very important for us to describe that. If each Caribbean nation contributes one big rural ferry, we could launch the Caribbean ferry system quickly, but we would need rather one overseer with the power to do it. Not 2020 would end in Bacchanal. Yeah, that's a very good. I think the multimodal transportation system is the best way, definitely, so we can hop. But again, as I'm saying, if we're not educated about, hopping from one nation to the next, then we can hear some horror stories too. When we get to Trinidad or get to Guyana, do people begin now to say, no, you can't come off, or Jamaica? Yeah, so we have to also come up with good immigration laws that protect citizens when they're traveling from one island to the next. Chris is a traveling podcaster that usually goes to the underprivileged areas. Okay, is he this white American or is it Trinidadian? Is he Trinidadian? Or I think I might have heard of him before. But is he white American? I think he is, right? We should be treating Haiti better than we do now. Now, do we see Haitians in the same way as the Dominicans? Do we just, well, I don't think we racialize them as the DR because I think we are more exposed than the DR in terms of what what Africa symbolizes. To the typical Dominican, Africa is a backward place. So they don't want anything to do with Africa. Even people as dark as I am in the Dominican Republic, they think that they are Hispanics and white, Spaniard, right? They don't want anything to do with Africa. So I think that we in the Caribbean, the English speaking Caribbean, probably would look at Haiti in a more from a more economic lens, where we see them as inferior because of their economic crisis that they're facing, the poorest Caribbean island or the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So from that perspective, but we would not racialize them. But in the DR, they're both racialized and also looked down economically. Status is saying Haiti is the welcome failed state to look down on and to see as eternally worse off. Sad, but true. It is true. So sometimes when we are blaming the DR, we also have to look at our own, treatment of Haitians, right? Like when they go to Jamaica too, they're sent back, right? Well, versus perhaps the Cubans are not sent back as frequently as the Haitians are sent back. So we also have to look at some of our laws. When we look at the fact that we did invite Haiti to become a member of CARICOM, and yet still our laws are discriminatory. We discriminate against them. Okay, so we have to look at these laws and say, are we really united? Are we coming together as a region to pool our resources together to fight against our common enemies? Dogfood is saying Chris is white Canadian, right, with Indonesian wife. Yes, I think I have seen him before, where he was blaming, what happened in Trinidad. Yeah, I've seen him. I don't follow him, but I've seen a video or two from him before. Yes, I do know him from that perspective. WHZ saying, I deal with a lot of Haitians and it is terrible what is going on there. Yes, it is terrible. And it seems to me that it's controlled. And the Americans do, and the French and the Canadians do not want them to be free. Do not want them to be free. So what they've done really, and it's sad to see that they built up the Dominican Republic, right? These colonial masters, they built up the DR, and then they said, look at the DR in comparison to Haiti. And that's a narrative that Black people are not people who are progressive, and they're seeing a mixed population with a white minority class that are because in the DR is the white people who rule the DR. Right? When you go to certain communities here, you wonder if you are in Europe, right? Because that's how they live and travel back and forth and behave a certain way. Okay? Now, we treat the Haitians, Maria is saying, we treat the Haitians as a stepchild. I believe that we should get away from the colonial propaganda. Yes. It's because we are not educated about it. We don't know much about each other. That's the problem. Whether it's Haiti or it's Jamaica or it's Trinidad and Tobago or it's Barbados, many of us just know by just interacting or seeing what we see on TV, but we don't know the history, right, and the cultures of each other. And then we respond to what we see on social media or mainstream media and think that that is the country, when it is much more than we are being shown. Dogfood is saying Christmas list. Is it Christmas list or Christmas list? Went to Haiti. Haiti is the welcomed failed right. Example, Gaza contrast. It is the Gaza of the Caribbean. And I do have a video on that. Haiti is the Gaza of the Caribbean, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, Haiti has been, even for a longer time than Gaza. Okay, and that's the whole point. How did we, Americans, put so much effort on Gaza, what was happening in Gaza, and they were, and you really wonder how they gave Haiti Sometimes only when they have like, an intense battle going there that they will put the cameras on them. But the cameras are never permanent, right? And to highlight what is happening in the country of Toussaint Louverture. Now, what I find highly troubling about vloggers is that some seem to have an inexplicable need to go to the worst places and to publish footage that gives known criminals a platform. Yes, and that I find that to be. Was Christmas List the one who was actually kidnapped in Haiti? Was he the one? Was Christmas List kidnapped in Haiti? And they had to call, I think several people had to call, to get to free him, and I think they called barbecue and they eventually freed him. I'm not sure if it was Christmas List or another person, but you're right, Stadex, that they tend to go to the worst part of these countries to highlight. And sometimes you really wonder, is that what gets them their money? And that's what people are saying about even the iShow Speed, that the brand people, the ones who sponsor them, right, sponsor their videos and stuff like that, that is perhaps what they want to show, because that is saleable, right? Poverty is saleable. Entertainment, the worst human behavior, is saleable, right? If I go down the streets and see two men fighting and they're kicking each other and they're, if I should videotape that, if I should record that incident, right, of two men fighting, in today's world, that's a lot. That's going to be viral. Put it on TikTok, it's viral. If I talk about what I'm talking now, about Caribbean disunity and all of that stuff, that is not viral. This is not a viral video because it doesn't have that sort of drama and violence that if I had shown two people fighting, So this is how we have been conditioned. And then we have WHZ saying, or Z, I believe that it is USA and British immigration policies that cause rejection of the Haitians. By the way, I'm hearing that Dominicans are using Haitian passports to get to the United States. So here you have a country, right, that rejects them, right, and think that they are the pariah of the Caribbean, yet Dominicans are using Haitian visas. Did you hear that? To get to the United States of America. How did that happen? Here you're cursing them, but at the same time, you're using their passports to get to the United States. How does that happen? Maybe they are going to say that they are, suffering from some whatever, because of the Civil War there and all of that stuff and the violence. So they're seeking some sort of refugee status. I don't know. I don't know what would cause them to do that. But that's what I'm reading, that is actually happening. By the way, also, I read an article sometimes last week from an American who visits Haiti very frequently, and he's reporting that the United States has now converted the Toussaint Louverture International Airport in Port-au-Prince into a military base. The United States has converted a major international airport, the only one I think in the city, in the capital city of Port-au-Prince, into a military base. That is to suggest where the U.S. is going with Haiti, and the fact that it is militarizing Haiti. And when will we also in our countries, in our neck of the woods, be militarized? Or are we already militarized? For example, we saw what happened in Trinidad during the buildup of the war with Venezuela against taking out Nicolas Maduro. And the fact that the United States planted a base there in Tobago, which it said it took back, or it removed the surveillance equipment, all of that stuff, but did it, right? We also have to look if that is true or false. Haiti is a CARICOM nation, right? CARICOM should be the one fixing Haiti, or at least helping the Haitians to help themselves. My understanding is that there was a lot of hesitance in having Haiti become a member of CARICOM. It was PJ Patterson, but PJ Patterson did it because he had a Haitian friend, somebody who lives in Jamaica, and she is, she is a woman of great influence, should I say, and she pushed him to do that. But I understand that it was not that they wanted to have gotten that done. More like-minded collabs with podcasters. Yes, yeah, we should. We should. And President Jafar is saying, I wonder what happened to barbecue. They had a bounty on his head last time I checked. Yes, I don't know. We don't. Barbecue is barbecue is a mystery, right? Today he's in the news. Tomorrow he's not in the news. We really don't know what is happening to barbecue. The other day, somebody described a Dominican guy described barbecue, or compared him, not described, but compared barbecue to alofoque. I don't know if you've heard about the controversy surrounding alofoque and how he treated, I Show Speed and all of the, the disunity and conflict controversy surrounding that. But would you compare alofoque to, what's his name, to barbecue? Quite an interesting, comparison to make. WHZ saying it is equivalent to Democratic Republic of Congo passports and refugee documents being used by other Africans to get into USA. That's a very good comparison. Yes, that's a very good comparison. President Jafar is saying Haiti and Cuba are unofficial members of CARICOM, but not full members. I think Haiti, though, President Jafar is a full member. Dominican Republic and Cuba, yes, are unofficial members, but Haiti, as far as I know, is a full member of CARICOM. But we know that they are not going to become, or they don't have that level of clout because of the economic crisis that is happening there. But Haiti, I think the other CARICOM countries also don't want these bigger countries like Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Cuba to join, because think about it. If Cuba should join, you have 12 million people. DR has 12 million people. Haiti has 12, probably 13 million people, right? So among these three countries, how many people you have? We have only 15 million among us as small Caribbean territories, right? Thereabout. So if we should have DR, Haiti, and Cuba joining CARICOM, they are going to overshadow us. The language barrier too. Okay, so I don't think that they can become, based on what I'm seeing, I don't think they're going to allow them to become members of CARICOM. Maybe it's a bit impossible, not practical. Yeah. But we're talking about for those of you who are joining, DR versus Haiti, Jamaica versus Trinidad. Is Caribbean unity dying? Is Caribbean unity dying? Or did we even have Caribbean unity before? Because sometimes we tend to romanticize that our Caribbean region was always unified and it was this and it was that. But maybe it was not unified. Maybe we are the ones who thought it was unified. But as the world now is, collapsing, we are being more exposed. We're now being more exposed, and the fissures in the Caribbean are now being more exposed, and people are seeing that we're not as unified as we think we are, right? And as the economics begin to deteriorate, just like between whites and blacks in America, right? We think that there is, integration and all of that. But as the economic crisis begins to deepen, then we're going to realize that blacks and whites are not as unified as they appear to have been. Yeah, the younger generation are more open to integrating. Yeah, that's true. Haiti and Cuba, but not our old puppet political class. That is true. That is true. Now, one of the things, though, President Jafar, we must understand, why would they want to unite them? Just because they think that they're more, knowledgeable of them, or do they understand the history? Or they're just doing it because it's something to do. Because we also have to look carefully at what happens. How are we different linguistically, culturally, in many other ways? WHZ is saying, let me get here, since the fall of the Federation, disunity was a problem. And we have to go back. I think Mr. Fred Corbin of Barbados, had given us I think I should replay that video on one of these days. He gave us a very important history of the Caribbean and CARICOM, right? I think I should replay that video so you can watch it. And he went into the Federation and told us about the fact that Bustamante of Jamaica was working with the United States, the CIA, to disunite the Caribbean, right? Much of what we see, like what Miss Mia Mottley did, what Edward Seager did also to Grenada and also Barbados, Adams and other people did to Grenada. All right. So at very important segments of our history, the United States does not want us to be unified. So it will use our leaders. It uses our leaders, or one or two of our leaders, to disunite us. And that's what it did with the West Indian Federation, which could have helped to give us some unity, and it didn't. Most Trinis listen to a lot of Jamaican music. It is difficult to dislike people whose mute songs you sing. No, 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 I disagree, Statex. Many white Americans listen to Black American songs, and many of them still don't like Black people. You know, I read a book in the States years ago, Statex, and the author was saying that white people are cool with Black culture, Black entertainment culture. So they go to their discos and they dance. But what the author said, the same corporate leader who might go into, you know, whatever, a Black space and dance and is entertained by Black music and Black cultural artifacts and elements. The same man who spoke to that Black person in the club, on Monday morning when he's dressed up in his suit, will pass that Black person as he never knew him. Why? Because that's a different part of his personality. His main reason for going to the clubs was for entertainment and not to build relationship, right? And that is what I'm not saying now that I don't have any problems with Trinidadians, certainly not. I find Trinidadians to be wonderful people, and I've never had any negative, you know, what you call it now, relationship interaction with them. Okay, but we must also separate our individual relationship with the one that we're seeing being played out in politics, through economics, and through, you know, and as a whole, how citizens see each other. So yes, we can we can hate each other, while the slave masters loved African music. Wow, they talked about it, how the melodies and the harmony, and they have never heard anything like that before. But afterwards, after they were entertained, they went and they beat them, right? So entertainment and real life are not synonymous. Who did Haiti dedicate their country to after their revolution? What do you mean by that? Are you asking us who did they dedicate to freedom? That's my understanding, that they wanted freedom and they said that slavery should not exist on the land, and that anybody who lives on the land, including, they said that they were going to call Black people white people Black people, because they wanted them to be a part of the family. So Haitians hate, you know, one of the things we have to give the Haitians credit for is that they, just unlike America, they just did not free select people. Everybody was free there, right? Even the foreign person. Once you come to Haiti and you escaped, whether you're coming from Jamaica or America or Barbados, wherever you were coming from and you're on the plantation, right? Once you escaped, you were free. Everybody was free. Slavery could not be practiced on Haitian soil. So they are the true first independent state in the Americas. The U.S. likes to claim that because it became free in 1776, and through its constitution it tells us, oh, all men are created equally. But afterwards it went and practiced slavery. So in the sense of the word, the true sense of the word, Haiti is not only the first free Black republic in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas, but it is also the first fully free independent country. Static is saying, if you want Caribbean unity, you need to attach it to bonus payments to Caribbean leaders upon the completion of the process. Then they will get it done in record time. Well, that's a good point you're making, but guess what? The leaders will not unify us, you know. The leaders are not going to unify us. In fact, the leaders are more, going to disunite us. Because again, who do they work for? They work for the elites. And the elites want us to be in this continuous state of flux and disunity so we don't challenge them. Right? So disunity works remember too that disunity worked on the plantations. And that is why the guy there, Willie Lynch, the Willie Lynch syndrome, Willie Lynch was sent from Jamaica to all over the plantations, including the United States, to let the American planters know that you can't unite the slaves. So if you have like one lighter, right, versus the one who is darker, you've got to disunite them. You have to, because if you unite them, then you're going to have serious problems. So unity is the enemy of our global masters and our elites or local elites. They know that if we are unified, then is when we are going to rise up against them and their power. Pedro, welcome. You know, when Pedro is not here, Pedro, you know that when you're here, I feel like I was about to leave the live and saying, where's Pedro? Where are the people? Where stay all of you guys? Thank you for joining. Greetings, all want to be kings in their little islands. Is the reason unity was and is in or isn't in CARICOM. Yes, we all want to be kings, and nothing is wrong with maintaining our uniquely Trinidadian Barbadian space. I don't have a problem with that. We are Trinidadians because these are the values we share. We're different from Barbadians and from Jamaicans and from Ghana and from Ghanaians, right? Nothing is wrong with that. It is when now we begin to use our national identity to say that we are better than the other, because it's no different from racism, where Europeans said that they are better than Africans, which they are not, right? So nothing is wrong with that. I respect that. Okay, but when we now begin to say, well, I'm better and you are whatever, I have more Indians and you don't, you have just blacks, doesn't make any sense. South Korean K-pop music comes directly from Black American, right? Black Americans have, you know, as we're saying, I'm happy you're here, Jafar, because you're very into the African stuff and you can teach us a lot. Because I was saying, Jafar, that when we talk about even calypso and reggae and hip hop and dancehall, we all influenced each other. There is a musician in Jamaica who's saying that there was this Trinidadian calypsonian, I can't remember his name, is it Willie? And he went over to Jamaica and he influenced a lot the mento music, from which reggae, we had what, was it mento then, ska, and I can't remember, and then reggae, yeah, something of the sort. But we all influenced each other's music, and nothing is wrong with that. We all, you know, it's just like writing. It's like writing. You will read Shakespeare, and I'll just say now they're calling the Trinidadian author, what's his name again, V.S. Naipaul. They're likening him to the Shakespeare of the Caribbean. But I'm sure Shakespeare influenced him too. Shakespeare would have influenced V.S. Naipaul's works, right? So V.S. Naipaul can't say that he's better than Shakespeare, because V.S. Naipaul would have learned some techniques, some literary techniques from Shakespeare. In the same way that Jamaica can't say that our reggae music or mental music was just purely, influenced by Jamaican indigenous people, right? Can't say that, because we are influenced by what we hear in the world, see, read, etc., if you know what I mean. So yes, South Korean K-pop, let me repeat that, J4, music comes directly from Black American R&B, and they are openly racist to Black people. Absolutely. Absolutely. Not because they like our music, because remember now that we are the entertainers of the world. And nothing is wrong with that, you know. Nothing is wrong if we are the entertainers, because white people can't entertain us. They're not as entertaining as people of color, as African people. We're just innately, we are just innately hilarious. We are spontaneous, and we love culture. We are colorful people, and nothing is wrong with that. My only problem is that when we showcase our culture for monetary rewards and we objectify ourselves to entertain other people, and we're not building, using those, what you call it now, the profits therefrom to build our country, which oftentimes we don't do. They only build individuals, like build the Sean Pauls and all of these hip hop stars, but they do not build the community. And that is what we have to do. How do we now, like the iShow Speeds and all these people, the entertainers of the world, how do we come collectively and use that which we have built to build our own community, and not to build, YouTube, which YouTube represent the white people too, right? We should have our own YouTube, shouldn't we? We shouldn't be on this platform. We should now be building our own YouTube, our own, music, Hollywood, whatever you want to call it, right? Very well said. Dessalini and Toussaint, right? That is what did they dedicate it to him, or They were the ones who took over. Dessalines became the president after Toussaint's, well, when the revolution was won in 1804, and they proclaimed their independence, they declared their independence. And by that time, Toussaint had died in France. Pedro Jamot is saying, and paid money for it. Right. And we have here, dog food is saying, the streets, I hate to call it that word though, dog food doesn't seem polite for me to say that. So we have the streets of Trinidad loves you Jamaicans, religious speaking, we are one people. Oh, so yeah, the street people, evolution proves we all related. Therefore, evolution is a tool of God we least understand. Just opinions may be wrong. Right. It could be too, as we're saying, that who are the people at the root cause of this division. It might not be, as you're saying here, dog food, the other man on the streets. It could be our leaders, or the powers that be. Just like during slavery, the typical white person might not have hated the black person, but the leaders, the planters, are the ones who inculcated that hatred of Europeans toward Africans. So yeah, I believe what you said. We have here, and thank you for share the live so we can have, because we need this conversation, and I need it to get out to the people so we can have better discussion in the Caribbean. They don't want to see Black unity and Black empowerment. That is the whole thing. That is the whole. So they want us to disunite because there's no powerful. Can you imagine if we had like an I show speed, but let us say we had one of our own people. Well, he's one of our people, but he doesn't represent, Black business. But let us say we had a Black person, right, or person of color to representing a Black business enterprise, a corporate structure like YouTube or whatever. And we had all on one platform. We had Trinidadians, Jamaicans, and all these Caribbean Canadians pooling our, cultural, blending all those cultural artifacts together, elements together. Can you imagine how the world would have been? Because in the Caribbean here, we're islands, but we have created some powerful cultures, haven't we? Right? We have created some powerful, people. When you look at when I Show Speed went to Jamaica, you on that one event you had Sean Paul, you had Beanie Man. I'm no favorite of these people, by the way, but for whatever it is, these are global people in the music industry. Shensia and all of these people, and he just had them in one event. That was something coming from one small little island, and so many global icons. Fascinating. We have Pedro Jamar says, is Texas and Nevada the same? The average CARICOM citizens unites. Yes. President Jafar is saying music is a global thing, not meant to be gate kept. This is the biggest issue with Trinidad. They want to gatekeep too much their pan music and soca. Right? It's not to be gate kept. Right? And how are they going to gatekeep it to when it's going out there? If you want your country to be recognized, you can't gatekeep it. Right? You can't get, because you want your country. That is how and even include the dancehall music. Give the dancehall. I'm not one of the favorites of dancehall genres. I must say that. But one of the things you must say about the dancehall artists, notice how they have all of these, what they call rhythms, right? And the same rhythm, they don't gatekeep it. They allow any other singer to come and they sing it. And perhaps that's why dancehall became such a very powerful movement, not only a genre, but a movement, because any DJ could come and they could sing on that rhythm and they bust that rhythm and then they just become global icons. Isn't that amazing? What if they had to create a different rhythm for themselves? Each dancehall artist, right? Would the genre have been as successful as it is now? Maybe not. And that is why we have to learn to share, right? Because the more we share is the more what we get the recognition that we think we want or deserve. Pedro Jamal is saying, when the Blacks in United States were together, someone fought to integrate. Well, they weren't together. I see what you're saying. When they were, at least, I've never thought that Black Americans were ever united. And we saw that during Marcus Garvey's, the whole thing that happened with him there. I don't think that Black people have ever been united. We've always been disunited. But as you're saying, Pedro Jamat, there are some instances where we're now more disunited because of, we're not going through similar experiences anymore. As at that time, they were dealing with segregation, so they had to unite, right? So when do we unite? Do we unite under slavery? Do we have to have economic collapse in the region to unite? Do we have to unite around a pandemic when all of us are sick and probably can't move? These are some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves, because these are some serious questions. Because obviously, when we're having times of prosperity or perceived prosperity, we are not unified. Think about it. It's when we're going through times of crisis or crises, difficult times, like slavery, segregation, economic hardships, economic pains, that we unite. And maybe that's when we're going to unite, when the war begins, when economic suffering begins. That's the time we'll unite. It is sad. WHZ saying, no, what had happened is that countries like Japan tried to steal steel pan as their creation, and Trinidad had a hell of a fight to stop Japan. Yeah, and they will. And if Trinidad did that, they should. If countries want to claim a music as their own, they should. Right, they should. And if Trinidadians are standing up to keep Calypso, which belongs to them, yes, then Japan has to respect that. And any other country, by the way. Yes, they had Black Wall Street. Some people say that it is exaggerated. The Black Wall Street was exaggerated. But yes, they had their own businesses and they were more independent. And that is why I'm saying to Pedro that when we tend to be suffering economic hardships, people tend to be more enterprising, right, than when we are in so-called prosperity. Japan, WHZ saying, Japan was trying to patent steel pan and block TNT from making their own steel pans. Wow, I didn't know that. Wow, that was interesting. And why did they want to do that? Why would they want to do that? WHZ, can you say? And then we have President Jafar saying, I understand that, but why attack other islands for encouraging youth to play steel pan throughout the islands? I see more of a fight from Trinidadians when other islands play steel pan. People are saying that and that's why I asked the question, because I saw that during the iShow Speed, when the Dominicans were, not the Dominicans from the Dominican Republic, but the Dominicans from Dominica were playing the steel pans, Trinidadians were saying that's their music and all of that stuff. Yeah, we need to stop that. Right, we need to stop that. You can have reggae artists coming out of Trinidad, and I'm sure you have dancehall artists coming out of Trinidad, even though they know that dancehall music came out of Jamaica. But you have people who love dancehall music and can challenge. Look at reggae artists. Look at the group that from England. What they call them again? That sang the Red Wine. What do they call that group again? From Britain. So the fact is that we can't gatekeep music. Right? We also sing other people's music because that music was meant to enjoy, right? To enjoy, and we should not gatekeep it. Of course, if somebody is trying to fight us and to gain the rights to our patent or to our own indigenous music, then we have to fight them because it's ours. Just like writing a book and you're telling me that it's your book, you wrote it. No, I was the one who wrote the book. You can benefit from it, but don't tell me that it's your book and you are the creator of that book. So yeah, from that perspective. Then we have President Jafar saying Trinidad exported its culture to Japan. That is Trinidad's own doing. We did too, Jamaica did too, and I don't think they can say that they own dancehall. There's a lot, they love dancehall music, but I've never heard where they were trying to. But maybe, I don't know, because some Jamaicans complain too that the Japanese, we support them, Jamaicans support them in terms of their dancehall, whatever creation, but they don't support Jamaica. That's my understanding. I don't know how true it is. I don't follow that dancehall culture, by the way. Then we have Pedro Jamati saying Black countries were the only ones colonized or enslaved, yet they're the only ones crying about slavery, while the free slaves moved on. but we were the only ones who were considered to be chattel. That's what you have to understand, Pedro Jamar. Slavery was, a reality for many people, and, maybe practically all racial ethnic groups were once slaves, right? Including in Europe. But the fact is that they were not treated as chattels, as animals, as people, as, non-humans. We were, right? They say that we were just chattel, and they treated us likewise. And then we could not buy our way out of slavery as many people were able to do before, right? If they saved up enough money, they could buy their way. So our slavery was much more dehumanizing, as it were, than any other slavery in the history of the world. And that is why we have to keep it at the forefront, because if it should ever resurface, it's going to be a nightmare. It was horrible, right? But we're not downgrading now that other people did not go through bad experiences of slavery. They did. The Jews in Egypt and other peoples in history, but the African slave trade was horrendous. So we have WHZ saying, agree Caribbean people should be free to play steel pan, right? But Trinidad must not allow patent claims by anyone. And I agree, we can agree to this. We can agree that is 100% right. Chattel, yeah, sold by your own, don't get emotional. Yes, but when you say own, what do you mean? It's just like, Pedro, I'm not sure what country you're living in, but let us say that your government and your leader should sell you out. It doesn't mean, therefore, that the citizens are in agreement, right? So that's what we have to understand. So we had, entrepreneurs in Africa who were perhaps some of the elites. We don't know specifically who they were. They sold them out, but it doesn't mean, therefore, that the citizens of Africa that lived in that particular country agreed with it, right? Because most of the times we don't. But they were helpless, and they could not have stopped it. Because look at what our governments are doing. Many of the things our governments are doing, our leaders are doing in our own countries, we can't stop them from doing it, can we? We just have to go along because they are the leaders, and they can, whatever. They can impose, they can discipline us. So yes, Pedro Jamart, I would not say that everybody was in agreement. Select business interests, vested interests, yes. Just like the pandemic. The large majority of people did not want the pandemic to happen. That happened in 2020. But they had no control over it. Right? So they had to deal with it. So yes, so that is from that perspective. Let's not now begin to say that, look at things black and white and say that slavery should not be spoken. That's not my point, that slavery. What I think we should be objective, as you're saying, Jamaat, that we should take responsibility where sometimes we need to take responsibility. I don't believe that all black people are wonderful, as some people think they are. I don't believe that all white people are evil, as some people believe. I don't look at black and white. I don't look at things black and white in that way. I want, nuanced, textured conversation where that is concerned. We have here, the Africans were slave traders, helpless. They are still friends of the crown today, Ashanti. Yeah, but we're still saying, Jamal, that the leaders are different from the ordinary citizen. You've got to understand that. Just like I'm saying to you that in our Caribbean or wherever you're from, that the decisions made by our leaders are often, sometimes our citizens don't even know. They aren't even aware of some of the decisions that our leaders are making, and they're sending them out. Yeah, the UB40, yeah, that's the group I was saying, that they are a reggae group, and Jamaica embraced them, and they were able to sing. In fact, reggae music today is not even being produced as much in Jamaica. Do you know that? Where is it being produced? In Europe, in perhaps parts of Asia. Right? So we find that our indigenous music right now is gone because of globalization. Right? What if Jamaica were to gatekeep its music? Because right now, even for the Grammy Awards, you see many other foreign groups getting the Grammys for reggae and not Jamaicans. Right? So then again, we have to look at that. Is globalization stealing our culture and our cultural artifacts? We also have to have a discussion on that. Okay? Because it's not only Trinidad, but it's also affecting other countries. African chiefs, not leaders. Yes. Well, you say, what would you say the difference between leaders and chiefs? One is chief, the other is a lead. Aren't they leaders? Do they lead? But they're called chiefs, right? Then we have the difference. Maria is saying the difference is that the black slaves were transported out of their country, right? Whereas the others were enslaved on their own, is it land here? Soil. Yes, I see it now. Sorry. On their own soil. You're correct. And they went hundreds of thousands of miles right away, never to see their families again. And when they landed on these soil, on these territories, Maria and other members of the audience, remember too that their families, even when they had families on, in these foreign countries, they were still fragmented and separated, right? Because they considered them to be shackled. They weren't human beings. So even the baby could be ripped from the mother, and the mother could be taken away from the suckling child, because according to the slave master, they were not humans, they were shackled. So remember now that this is the difference. This is the difference, and that's why we have big family problems, family issues among Black people wherever we go, because we're just seen as studs just to procreate and create more slaves. Then we have Pedro Jamot says Black slaves went Africa to sub-Saharan slave trade. Now we're not going to this. We're not going to. And these are some of the things that disunite us. Let's not pay attention on about who had the worst and whatever. Let us learn lessons from every of these slave trade. See the tricks that the slave masters used and how we can fight against the system of injustice, because we can spend eternity talking about who had the worst and who is the best and whatever, right? But we want to look at systems of oppression and how we can fight against these systems. Okay, and certainly right now in the Caribbean, we are now divided because our colonial masters, through money and influence and power, they are using these tools against us to separate us, and then eventually we are falling for that, and then they are going to divide and conquer us, right? And that is the point that I would like to raise in this conversation here, right? We will never be united because our colonial masters or leaders think that if we should unite, then they feel that we are going to launch a revolution against them and then take away their power, their influence, and their money. Okay? So don't listen to what they're saying. Listen to what we need or needs. President Jafar is saying, this is why I laugh at Jamaicans and Trinidadians' ultra-nationalism. We were a people without a country. Nationalism is a recent concept for us. Yes, and the fact is that many of what we say who are Jamaicans, and I'm happy that Jafar is saying, I always ask people that, when you say Jamaicans, I say, what Jamaicans are you referring to? Are you talking about the leaders and the elites who represent the colonial masters, or are you talking about the ordinary man and woman? And I say the same thing for Trinidadians, right? What Trinidadians are you talking about? And you must be able to declare that, right? Now, even Americans, what Americans are you talking about? The ones who love wars and they want to profit from wars, but are the Americans profiting from wars? The ordinary man and woman on the street? No. But the government does, and the private sector does, right? And that's what we have to look at. Yes, so you're correct, Jafar. Stop blaming slavery because it was horrible in that era and no race is innocent. But nothing is wrong in saying that we're not blaming slavery. We're saying that slavery has had some effects on present day, what do you call it now, or current state of economics and political, what should I say now, lack of progress. Okay, it has. Just like we can't, if a hurricane comes or an earthquake and it devastates your island, we can't completely blame the natural disaster, but we can't ignore that the natural disaster did have some impact on or lack of economic progress. All right, we can't be that. We have to be balanced people, right? And that's what I'm trying to do here. Yeah, so we could be uprooted and sent to any island within the Commonwealth. That's it. Yeah, we could be we had no citizenship. Yeah, even though we claim that we are citizens of the country and we should be proud, don't get me wrong, because everybody wants to have something, a piece of land that they think they own and a country that they think they belong to. Okay, because human beings have to live in a state of feeling that they belong to a family, a land, a nation, a social group, right? So even though to some extent it might be some illusion there, but it's some truth to it also, because we have a passport and we have our birth certificates and stuff like that. So let's not go down onto a rabbit hole. But as Jafar is saying, we don't control systems of power. That is what we know. We don't control it. So whether you're Trinidadian or you're Guyanese or Grenadian or Barbadian, you just don't control systems of power. You're right. You're not in charge. That's what I'm saying. Pedro Jamati is saying, your mind is what stops progress. Yes, that is true. But if you're in a situation where you are, what do you call it now? You have chains over your hands and your feet. I think that you can be stopped. Wouldn't you think that, Pedro Jamati? If somebody should imprison you right now, I'm not saying you probably can't write a book in prison like some people have done, right? And you probably can do other things, I don't know. But the fact is that to some extent, you are going to be impeded in terms of your social mobility, your economic mobility, right? So we have to also be practical again. Your mind, yes, but we also have our physical aspect. We can also be enslaved and can be stopped from our progress. President Jafar is saying, MLK said it is a cruel jest to tell a man pull himself up by the bootstraps when his boots have no straps. Absolutely. That's a very good description, analogy to make, President Jafar. Absolutely. We cannot just think, and until we find ourselves in the position, then we cannot just say, there are people who will say, oh, look at those Africans and some other people in Asia and in India, for example, and they're poor. Well, if they have a mindset, they should be able to rise above their poverty and do what they can do to uplift themselves. But when you're in that poverty, that level of poverty, with nothing, no opportunity, with zero opportunity, what can you do? What can you really do? And I'm not saying that one or two people might not be saved, because that always happens, that one or two people might be lucky. Somebody might come to the village or wherever and decide to help you out, or you're bright and you're able to go to school and somebody recognizes your talent and help you, right? So one or two people might be lifted out of that poverty, right? But it doesn't mean therefore that that's a rule, that's the exception. Right? So we have to understand that the mind, yes, is very important, Jamal, but you also have to have some opportunities and also the freedom to be able to do what the mind desires you to accomplish. And that is why America initially tried to create that sort of space where humans could explore or achieve their full potential, if you will. Were you a slave? Well, I'm not a slave. But the fact of the matter, when you say slavery comes in many forms. You have economic slavery, you have mental slavery, and you can also have physical slavery. All right. So I'm suggesting that most of us are going through economic slavery in our different respective territories because of the lack of economic opportunities, lack of jobs, and other things. And there are those of us who are also mentally enslaved, intellectually enslaved. So it depends on how you're looking. Sometimes we're just looking at slavery as the shackles that, that were around the hands and the feet of slaves. But we have other shackles that we have to deal with. So yeah. Would you like, Jamati saying, would you like someone to take revenge on you for something your great grandfather has done? No, and we're not suggesting that this is a channel that is saying that people have to take up revenge. No, absolutely not. All right. But what I'm saying, however, we need to have conversations like these, because if we don't have them, it's going to happen. That is the irony, President Jamal, if we don't speak out against what happened and the rights and and how that situation should have been righted long ago, then it's going to happen whether we like it or not. Revenge is going to happen. Because when people don't talk about what bothers them, then they begin now to unleash their anger out on people that they should even unleash it out. That's take it out on. That always happens. And that is why it's important for us to have conversations like these to educate each other and to get each other's perspective. Then now we can come to an understanding of the truth, and we can use the truth to practice justice. Right. So President Jafar is saying we are not chattel slaves, but we definitely are mentally enslaved and financially enslaved. And he's right. All right. Because the opportunities that the person, the white person, the people of European descent received, we did not receive that. And that is why even in the United States right now, while the black population might be equivalent to $10 trillion, they're saying to a $10 trillion economy, but how much do they own? The assets of which, how much do they own? Do they own the assets of that $10 trillion? No. Okay? And that's what we have because of the inequities. And that happened because of slavery. Yes, ask Israel the same question. Yes, we just have to be fair. And Pedro is saying, I forgive my African ancestors for selling my descendants, but I won't forget they took part. Yes. And that is also true, Jamaat. All right. We are not saying here that we should not blame, because as we're saying, they should be blamed. Just like I'm blaming our leaders, Obama, all these people, we call them out when we have to call them out. But we're not suggesting that all black people were like Obama, or all, Trinidadians are like Miss Cameron Person Bissessar, etc., etc. We're saying that you have the leaders, you have the citizens, and they might be diametrically opposed. WHZ is saying if your ancestors stole something and you continue to be in possession of that stolen goods, then you are to blame or to be blamed and risk losing that good, that which was stolen. Absolutely. Now, and I think that it's time for Europeans also, people of African of European descent, to come and say, we're sorry and we did steal, and that the rights should have been corrected. Even in the Bible, ladies and gentlemen, when the Jews were in, for those of you who believe in the Bible, if you don't believe in the Bible, that's okay. But the fact is that when the Jews were under Egyptian slavery, right, that God told Moses that Pharaoh should not let the children of Israel go until he remunerated them, gave them reparations. And Moses would not leave until they got back reparations. Egypt had to pay them for leaving because they had them under bondage for many years, right? The Jews, as we were told in history, got their reparations again during Hitler. So they should right their wrong by also giving some donations. My point about reparations is not that we shouldn't get, it's just the way how it's going to be dispersed. I don't trust our leaders. President Jafar is saying majority of the old wealth that still exists today was created during the chattel slavery era. Absolutely. It didn't go anywhere. And we never got it back, right? Black people it was never used to build up Barbados and to industrialize Barbados or to industrialize Jamaica or all these other countries that, under which these people earned a lot of money. So we need to know where that was, which, as Jafar is saying, they still have it in their bonds and stock markets and investment and all that stuff. The Vatican and also the royal families, that's where they have their money, right? And we have here, you sell your own and want sorry. Well, remember again, you're still going back to the same thing, President Jamal, and I think I'm clear on that. And says not your own who, right? Who sold what? And we're saying the leaders, the chiefs. I think you are the one who said the African chiefs, right? So they sold them, but the people, the ordinary men and women in that African country did not sell their own brothers and sisters, right? They just came upon them, and they didn't have the power to. If you have police, somebody send for your family members, some big burly policemen come into your home to take them. There's nothing you can do, There's nothing you can do, because the law has much more weight. The state, I should say, has much more weight than you, the ordinary citizen. So all you can do sometimes is cry, and if you're in a country that is free and you can probably pursue the law, then and get them back. But you are powerless when the state comes, against you. And that was like a state and business interest collusion, right? Where they came together against African people, ordinary African people. Remember too that Africans have class and tribes, that we have different, whatever, in our countries right now. So they're not just one people, they have different class interests too. All the European didn't buy slaves, so stop it. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. So what am I saying? Did I say all of the Europeans are involved? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, President Jamal. We have to have these conversations with less emotions and try to be objective. When I talk about, that some of the people are just saying black, 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 I don't love this black, black thing. I want a more balanced conversation. But at the same time, I understand that blackness and black culture and black conversations have their space in the conversation. Slavery has its place, and what Europeans did. And we're not saying the ordinary European man. We're talking again about the interests, the economic interests, the political interests, and so forth and so on, the religious influence. Let's not forget about that. Did African chiefs make the guns and chains and castles and boats that sailed to the Caribbean as well, right? Stop talking nonsense. And that's the whole thing. Yeah, if they didn't have the guns, as Jafar is saying, it would be very difficult. It would have been very difficult for them to have been captured. Right? I'm sure that the citizens would have come up against it. And we are told too in history that even the ones who sold, them into, our brothers and sisters, into slavery, some of them could not even think of the level of torture that Europeans would have used against them. It was unthinkable. They didn't know. Even though I am not here because they should not have been sold in the first place. Whether it was nice or it was not nice, they should not have sold them in the first place. The Europeans bought what was selling. Yeah. Now let's stick to the subject. The subject matter is, are we being divided? And I think we can't use slavery and discussion of slavery. Again, let me just say this too. Let's not use divisive conversations to divide us. Many times, even in religion, people might not agree on a particular topic, but sometimes you need to stop the conversation on that, because this is not going to help us. This is not going to free us, right? What is going to help to free us now is if we attack the problems that we are facing at the moment. Yes, we can look at what happened during slavery, learn our lessons, but if we're going to spend the night talking about who was right and who was wrong, then we are going to miss the point, be divided, and we're going to be conquered, right? And that is what we don't want to happen on this platform. Same thing happens today, right? The same thing happens today, that we are enslaved by our own leaders. And if they paid, the leaders will eat right. And that's my take to President Jamal, that the reparations, I don't want it to be given to our politicians, because I know that they are corrupt and they will not be using it for the right purpose. They won't be using it for the right purpose. I know that. Yeah. So I think that we can let me see. There were a couple of other videos, because there was one time I was going to show you where I Show Speed, right, was in the DR, and when he was asked if he was going to Haiti, right, he did not respond in terms of assuring the young man that he was ever going to go to Haiti. But in the Bahamas, when he went to the Bahamas, he said, when the Haitian lady approached him and asked, when are you going to Haiti? He said, soon. Right? Soon. So that was interesting, that in the DR, he was not able to say that he would ever go to Haiti, right? But in the Bahamas, it was allowed. Do you see where I'm coming from? Where depending on what space you find yourselves in, then you're either suppressed or your conversation about yourself has to be suppressed, or in another territory in Bahamas, and I'm sure the Bahamian perhaps really don't like vacations as well too, but at least in that space, that conversation could have been had, and Aisho's Speed was much more comfortable in responding to that lady rather than responding to that gentleman, that young man that asked him, "When are you going to Haiti?" Do you see the difference? And that is why we have to speak about these uncomfortable truths in the Caribbean region, because we are heading into a system, into a time where if we don't get united, if we don't unite around a certain cause, a certain purpose, then we are going to be deceived and they are going to destroy us, right? They are going to destroy us. President Jafar is saying ISHO's speed masters would discourage him from going to Haiti. Absolutely. And President Jafar, I'm happy that you are saying that, because that is so. Because one of the things, President Jafar, that many people have, and I'm happy that you are not a part of that, is that because somebody's black, it means that they're not working for the masters, for the white man. We saw that with Obama. Obama was black, so we thought that he was going to come and save Black Americans and the Black world. And he did the complete opposite, right? He did the complete opposite. Don't think that it's only part. That's what I want to say, and I think I forgot. I wanted to make this point early on in the video. Don't believe it's only our political leaders who are controlled. Don't believe that only our political leaders who might have a significant amount of influence over population. People like Aisho Speed is going to have and has had significant amount of experience over the Black and the global population, right? And they're using him. They're using him. They're using him. And we're going to be divided. I think we're already divided. Just like Africa, we are fed misconceptions about Haiti. Absolutely. Right? And as you know, I'm not sure if you were here, Jafari, when we were reading the article that was written by another African a person who said that, you know, as far as he understands, the whole matter of the ISHO Speed entertainment spectacle was just about, you know, showing up the stereotypes, the negative stereotypes of Black people, of African peoples. That's what he's doing as entertainment, and to divide us. By so doing, it also divides us. But we're not going to talk about that. We're more happy when we are displayed on a wide television and saying, "Oh, that's Jamaica, or that's Trinidad, that's Barbados, and there goes the soca music, there goes the chutney music, there goes reggae music," and we're happy for that. We're happy for that because we're still in bondage. We're still, if white Americans, if Europe does not validate us, we don't believe that we are important. We don't believe that we are equal to them. That's the sad thing. Pedro Jamot is saying, you should ask what was the motive for going to the other islands. Well, I think his motive for going to all islands was the same, right? To entertain, to distract, and to appropriate what we call it now, money from Caribbean culture. It's saleable. Entertainment is saleable. And that's what he did, right? At the end of the day, Caribbean citizens saw themselves on a big stage and did not resist, right? Because they were being exposed, as it were, on a big platform, which all of that has to do with mental slavery, right? We entertain ourselves. Why don't we entertain ourselves? Why do we, does Sean Paul need ISHO Speed to make him global or more global? Does Beanie Man, does any soca singer, Kez, is it Kez? Kez, the guy, the Kez from Trinidad and Tobago, right? Does he need I Show Speed or all these people? Do they need these people to make them more global? No, right? Then we have here Jamati saying a boy sitting in man lap, right? Barking like a dog, right, and running around like he's on high, like he's high, right? I don't know. I don't see. I just didn't see what was going on in the Caribbean. Why should we appreciate that? Right? Why should we appreciate that sort of culture? Some of the jumping counter to high five the people who sell there. And we tolerated that. The only country that didn't tolerate it was Barbados, with the ladies that told him no. But Trinidad tolerated it. Jamaica tolerated it. Right? Is of saying that does not happen here and should not have. By the way, do you hear him using the BC word in Jamaica that people use, right? And he's saying, welcome to BC, Jamaica. Now, what if we had gone to America and say, welcome to F America? Do you think they would have taken that and be happy with that sort of language? Right? And he was able to just laugh out. This is our culture. It's nothing. It's just people just running around, some animals barking, running around. Yeah. It's sad. Maybe I Show Speed was not allowed to speak about Haiti then in the DR. Right, he wasn't allowed. It's obvious. In fact, when the look on his face, he was nervous. There was some tension when they asked, I'm from Haiti. You could look at his face and he sort of turned his face away and kept on moving. Right? I don't think it was because he didn't want, as we're saying, to have the conversation, but his people that sponsored him, his sponsors, wouldn't want that conversation to be had. So I'm not blaming I Show Speed. Don't get me wrong, I think I Show Speed is racist. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the people who control him, the people who control him financially, don't want him to be engaged in those difficult conversations. President Jafar is saying we only measure our value in the eyes of Western and European nations. Exactly. So as much as we say we are free and we talk our talk and we're independent, we only validate ourselves through the eyes of European and Western nations. That is true. That is true. Even Bob Marley. Do you know that Bob Marley was not accepted in Jamaica for many years? The people that the higher class, the people of the higher end of the socioeconomic ladder in Jamaica, could not stand him. Could not stand him. That is why the same lady there, Brittany, his girlfriend, the one that is the mother of Damian Marley, she was saying that when she, because she was a middle class Jamaican, when she was with Bob Marley, that people of her class, they ridiculed her. And look at how they're embracing her son now, and Damian Marley's and all of that, and the Marley family is like a dynasty in Jamaica. Why? Because he was accepted abroad. Right? It was when his music started to be played in England and in the United States, right, that Jamaicans started to feel that he was important. Before, he was just an old Rasta nigger. Right? So this is what we do. And if I Show Speed also was not affirmed by YouTube as one of the greatest streamers in the world, you wouldn't have recognized him. You would not even passed him. You would not have even said hello to him. And that is how your mind is. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. This is what we need to work on. Okay? But because he has money, influence, and he represents the power of Western civilization, right? As low as it may be, because right now, Western civilization is at its lowest point. Because when they can just showing you somebody who is barking, as Pedro Jamat is saying, and sitting in somebody's lap and behaving stupid. By the way, what did you think about Popcorn in Jamaica, who told him that you can't come here sticking out your tongue and sitting in a man's lap because Jamaicans won't take nicely to it? What did you think about how he told him and Do you think that was staged, or do you think it was performative? I don't know. But it was interesting that he put that on camera, that he could have said that to him, and he whatever. It was weird. And people boasting about millions, right? And I understand, just by from probably one country, one Caribbean country probably made like $60,000 from, or probably more from each Caribbean country, right? Yeah. Pedro Jamot is saying he jumped over the bar, right, and went in the fast food restaurant in Barbados, and but they disciplined him, and that's what I liked about Barbados. They said no, 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 right? The people in Jamaica just laughed. They just laughed. Like that was something to be done. You're at a food place and you're going to jump the counter, right? And nobody corrected him because he had money and power and represented Western civilization, right? This is how we think and behave in the Caribbean. And right now we are, who had I Speed Show said that Barbadian chicken was the best, or I Show Speed said that Grenadian dance was the best. Who cares? And nothing is wrong if he says that. He's a 21-year-old man. He's independent. He can say whatever he wants to say. Just like I can go to Trinidad tomorrow and say that their curry goat is the best. Nothing is wrong. That's my opinion, and I should be able to express my opinion. It's a problem now when my opinion almost becomes, it is the reality, the fact. So when he went to Jamaica and he said he liked the KFC, it's closed. The case is closed. Jamaica fried KFC is the best in the world. What nonsense is that? Because a 21-year-old young man says that Jamaica's KFC is the best. Does that mean that it is the best? No. It's the best according to him, if he truly thinks that way. But it does not mean that it's the reality for other people. And that is what I can't find. Something is wrong. The way how that young man had you guys under his wings, something is going to happen in this region. I don't know what's going to happen, but something is going to happen. And many of you are going to be deceived. And and intentionally, you have deceived yourself. And you should be deceived. President Jafar saying when Bob Marley was apart, the Wailers, he was a dirty right, Rasta. He was accepted by the upper class of Jamaica when he ditched the Tosh and Bunny and became mainstream in England. Right. And even so, he still wasn't, even up to his death, he still wasn't really, so much recognized. Remember now that Bob Marley even became more so of a global icon after his death too. He was short-lived. He was only 36 when he died, so, but definitely after he died and everything, his music went all over the world and he's still relevant. There is a conspiracy theory, which I found, to me, it doesn't make any sense, but it's something to talk about. There's this gentleman on TikTok, and he came and he said that, do you think I Show Speed's going to the Bob Marley Museum is one of the agendas is to sort of wipe out Bob Marley's influence? I don't think that, because he's saying that, Bob Marley has been relevant, even after death. How many people after death are as relevant as Bob Marley is, all right? Even Monterey Wise, he is still relevant. They're saying that, America and probably Great Britain to a lesser extent has always wanted to sort of wipe out that influence that Bob Marley has on the world. And so forth there. But I don't see how iSpeed could in any way, wipe out, eradicate the relevance of Bob Marley's, legacy and music. I don't think he can do that. Another thing that he would have to understand is that Bob Marley, his children, and grandchildren are forced to be reckoned with. It's amazing how he has created a family. Well, he probably didn't know he was going to create that family, right? A family, like a dynasty. As one dies, then you have one comes up, and you have a Damian Marley and all of his sons and grandchildren. It's amazing how a poor man who came from the lower class of Jamaican society was able to rise up. And let's give Westerners their credit. Without them, he wouldn't have been able to succeed. So we can use the system to benefit from it, right? So nothing is wrong in using the system to uplift, and he did uplift in his own right? That Bob Marley did use the system, the Western system, to uplift. Let's give it, and that is what you and I should be doing. In his own rights, you might agree with him in everything he did, but he did use the system to uplift hundreds of thousands of people around the world. We have here, yes, old man, it's not that serious. KFC, right, is not, KFC is paying him for his promotion. Who is the old man? You are the old man? Yeah, and you don't know how serious it is because you don't read, right? You don't read. You don't understand global influence, okay? You don't understand global influence. Then we have Marley was mixed. Yes, he was mixed. His father was British. And then we have the KFC wars were utterly ridiculous and laughable. And these things, this lady who is talking about old man, she doesn't understand how, revolutions and things happen. Yeah, it begins with simple things. It begins with simple things. And the division in the Caribbean about this KFC thing, it was going on before he came, The KFC sort of rivalry was going on before Asheville Speed visited the region, but it sort of deepened more when he came. I don't know for what reason. People were just all. That was like his seminal moment in all Caribbean countries. This KFC nonsense. Then Pedro is saying, I feel it was a gender tour, right? It was a gender tour. What do you mean by gender tour? President Jafar says, another thing no one is talking about, Elon Musk was spying. Somebody said about it the other day, President Jafar, you weren't on the live since recently, but somebody mentioned this on another live. Maybe it could have been 2 lives before. Yeah, was spying on our territories through iShowSpeed's tour using Musk Starlink for all his live streams. Did you hear that? And I think that was true. I think that was true. I think, when you look at everything, there was nothing in his life, in everything that he did was like private. Everything was on display, was on full display. Everything was on full display. And many of you who are thinking that this was just a guy going through the Caribbean, highlighting Caribbean culture, and it was innocent and nothing's going to come of it. You are going to see very soon that there are some strange things, and we can see some strange things happening in the Caribbean and the world at large. But this was not just an innocent tour, right? We've had tours. Other people, YouTube vloggers, have done tours, some of whom have done even more educational tours of the Caribbean, right, than iShowSpeed could have ever done. He just spent some hours in your country. My God, what could he have showed to the world? Okay, but because he has this broad, big platform, right, and they're using it now to shape culture and to monetize our Caribbean culture. Which one is greater? Which one is more superior? Which one is whatever? All of that, he's getting money through that. And you are empowering him to do that. You are empowering him to do that. Okay? Interesting. By the way, the young man from Haiti that suggested that, was asking iShowSpeed rather, I keep on saying iSpeed show, it's iShowSpeed, asking iShowSpeed if he was going to Haiti. I understand that he has thousands of subscribers now and views because of that one viral moment. Can you imagine? So he has his own TikTok, and he has hundreds of thousands of views because of the iShowSpeed's platform, and the fact that he was trying to promote Haiti and to show the world the relevance of Haiti in Dominican conversation, which was something very controversial and something that you really wonder how the police had not come and imprisoned him, because that's a no-no in Dominican culture. They want nothing to do with the Haitian flag whenever they are on display, particularly to the world, right? So he was a brave young man to have done what he did. But I understand that they fired him, but thankfully he's now able to go on his TikTok and perhaps YouTube, where he's now a viral personality, he's a viral vlogger. President Jafar is saying, we are so blinded by potential positives, we overlook the possible negatives. We should be aware of both. Yeah, and I'm very good that you highlight that, because there were positives in terms of, let us look at some of the cultures. He was able to look at the history, right? Some people might not know that Haiti and the DR share the same island. They know now, right? Instead, they may not have known about the tension between Haiti and the DR. Many people are now learning that. And look at what has happened. Right now, it's not the negative image did not come from Haiti, as Dominicans would think. The negative images came from Dominicans themselves, because Alofoke, right? I understand that because he had some disagreements with Aisho Speed, he had actually painted some mural in Santo Domingo. And when after the disagreement, they went and they tore it down. They demolished his mural, the mural of his face, of Aisho Speed's face, in Santo Domingo. Right? This is what we're talking about now, Caribbean disunity, where because there's a disagreement, right, you are going to destroy something that you dedicated to your guest. Whether you like your guest or not, he's your guest, and he didn't do Dominicans anything. He didn't do them anything. All he did, he came here, and I think what they took some offense at was when he said that his program was botted. That what he saw on the live when he was, Alafoke showed him 1.9 million concurrent viewers, and he said that YouTube told him that it was only 300. Right? And then it was when Dominicans begin now to behave as if, Aisho Speed was blaming Alofoke. But he did not call any names. All he said was that somebody called him from YouTube, one of the representatives, to tell him, to inform him that the live did not get to 1.9 concurrent viewers. Nothing is wrong with that. And he just said it was not 1.9, because he was emotional about it. He thought that it was so, and that this was something unprecedented, right? But it was not so. So the Dominicans themselves, they gave the country, not the people. Now, don't get me wrong, now the Alofoke and his team gave a bad image, portrayed, I should say, a bad image of Dominicans, not Haitians, right? Which, probably they would think it was the Haitian flag that stained their image in the global arena. But ironically speaking, it's Dominican behavior, right, that stained their image on the global platform. Let's look at what Pedro is saying here. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Absolutely. Absolutely. And people are saying, oh, this is a 21-year-old man. Yeah, he is small. And we should, I am in my 40s, so I could be his father, right? So I would encourage him, and we should encourage him. We're not here because he looks like a wonderful young man, right? Somebody who does not mean any harm. Somebody who's coming from far economically. He's not wealthy, obviously, and he used his streaming, chaotic as it might be, they might have been. He was recognized for whatever he was doing. I don't say any talent, but whatever he's doing there, he was recognized and he was given his flowers, right? And he's making his money, right? But we also we can't be caught up within that. As you're saying, Pedro Jamat, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And while he might have good intentions, he too might not know, because he's so young, the dangers that lurk around him. So it is for his parents, for those of us who are, good admirers of his, right? To tell him, to let him know that he could have sold himself or his soul to these people, right? And so we have here, the Caribbean already have a complicated relationship with DR because of how they treat Haitians. DR did not help their image after Aisho Speed's visit. They certainly did not. Right? And they showed that they don't like Black people, because for them to have created a mural of his face and then went and do you know what they were saying? Oh, este morenito, este negrito, este haitiano. They begin to now call him this darky, right? This Negro, this Haitian. And Haitian here has a lot of connotation. It means blackness. This African guy, right? And they said it with all the hatred, right? So they only accepted him because of his money. And when he did not agree to what they wanted him to agree to, then they decided that they no longer liked him, right? And that's the whole thing. In the DR, black people, dark-skinned people are only liked if you are powerful and you have money. Outside of that, tú eres haitiano, you are a Haitian, an African, right? Which means, in their eyes, that you are not civilized. Okay? That's the whole thing of the story that we have to understand. Right, this dirty Moreno, right? Negrito was flying. Absolutely. That's how they look. They saw it. It's dirty Moreno. But even when the guy told him that he was on 1.9 concurrent Alafoque, 1.9 current viewers, and iShow's speed became emotional, you can see that Alafoque was not like he was emotionally attached to what he said. It was almost like he was trying to deceive him. But eventually, iShow's speed caught up on what was going on. And I think I understand that at one moment, Alafoque brought him to his studios, right, in Santo Domingo, and was asking him some personal questions about, oh, you're rich, you're making all these millions. So he asked, where's the watch? Like, he wanted to see that he had this very expensive watch on, or he was wearing expensive clothes. One of the things we have to give iShow Speed his props for, though, flowers for, he wasn't wearing any big name brand thing on, right? He just dressed ordinary and going around, all of this stuff, and whatever that black people sometimes have on, and they have to showcase their wealth and carry their wealth on their chest, right? He didn't do that. He looked humble and moved around as, a normal, regular citizen, so you have to give him credit for that. Yes, thank you. Welcome, Stephen Knight. Didn't see you. Welcome to the program. Yes, you have to give him his credit for that. He wasn't just running around with expensive clothes. So when he said to the Dominicans, why are you asking me those personal questions? They did not like it, and he walked out, right? Because why would you want to ask somebody like iSpeed what he uses his money for? That's not my problem. We already know that he's a multi-millionaire. That's his business. Whatever he wants to use his money for, he works for it, and that's his business, right? And not that of. But Dominicans tend to be like that. They tend to ask you very personal questions. Where do you work? How much money you earn, and So I'm not surprised when they asked him that question. Alafoque was buying bot streams. Yeah. How did he do that though? How can you? I'm trying to understand, President Jafar. How was he able to move from 300,000 views to 1.9 million views? To me, how do you do that? Unless YouTube was involved. Was YouTube involved in the whole process? Because I don't see how one man, right, could move a stream from 300,000 to organic viewers to 1.9 million viewers. To me, I don't know. But I'm not technologically oriented. I'm not that very good with technology. So maybe somebody else knows how to do it. I don't think I could. How did he do it? I don't know. So I think YouTube has a part in that. Pedro Jamot is saying, I don't worry how no one sees me for validation. Right. I don't care how unless, well, let us be also careful, because there are times when we might not, let us say that we are, dressed in an unkempt manner, or we're not carrying ourselves in the best way. Maybe you're depressed, maybe you don't feel it, whatever, for whatever reason. And somebody calls you out. Nothing is wrong with somebody say, Andrew, you're, what's happening? You're stacking up, whatever. But in terms of who you are, genuinely speaking, there are things we can't change about ourselves, right? And we should not. I have a scar on my forehead. I'm not going to allow anybody to put me down because of that. You might have a speech defect, or you might have something, whatever. All right. I'm not going to have people validate me because of what they think I should be. Right. Once you're doing your best, then stay your best. And that is what we have to give this young man about. He was not flaunting, as many Black Americans like to do, name brand diet and name brand shoes, and you look all bedecked with all of these jewelry. He didn't do that, which was very, and he had his bodyguards, so he could do that because he had strong bodyguards to protect him, right? But he didn't do that. So that was very good of him. President Jafar is saying they have bot services. You can buy bot streams to inflate your views as a marketing tool. Oh, I didn't know that. And YouTube does not, how does YouTube not pick up on that? Because do you know that the other day, I'm telling you guys this, that before I went on a live last week, I saw where I was on 7,997 subscribers. When the 3 hours were finished and I went back on my channel, I saw 7,100 subscribers. So I said, how could I move from 7,997 subscribers to 7,101 subscribers? So I contacted YouTube, and YouTube told me that it's working as expected. So if Alafoke and other YouTubers are buying bots, which I don't, then how is it that they don't discipline them? How do you buy bots and YouTube allows it to happen when they have to pay you for the views? And then they're telling me, oh, your channel is working as expected, when they stole almost 900 subscribers from my channel. Weird. We have here President Jafar is saying the more perceived eyes you have on you will attract more viewers is the concept. The more perceived eyes you have on on you, not on your channel, but on you, will attract more viewers is the concept. I'm trying to understand that. It's deep. President Jafar, really, I don't think I understand it. The more perceived eyes you have on will attract more viewers is the concept. Could you break that down for me? I don't think I understand it. We have Steve Knight is saying YouTube lied to you. Your subject matter does not fit the narrative. They're going to fool with your numbers, and that's exactly what they're doing. I was shocked, Stephen, to see I could come off a live, and before I went on the live, I said I am three subscribers away from 8K. Now, mind you, sometimes people will unsubscribe, right? So sometimes you have 3-4 people unsubscribe, but the magnitude of the unsubscription I saw on that day in 3 hours, I said, no, that has never happened. And they're still saying that, yes, it happened, it's spam, and they make up all sort of excuses for taking away those 900 subscribers. Yet still, they had Alafoke. I understand even his entire program is botted, my understanding, in the DR. And he has millions of subscribers. And I understand on every live show that Alafoke does, he has over like a million views, concurrent views. Right? This world is an interesting world. So I am wondering if YouTube is involved in what happened to Aisha Speed with Alafoke. But why did they do that? Why did they create that controversy? I don't know. Yeah, President Jafar is saying they can pick up on it now and shut your channel down. But they haven't shut Alafoke's thing down, right? If they do that, President Jafari, if they do that, if that is what YouTube does, which it doesn't seem like the rules apply to everybody. Maybe it applies to me, right? Maybe it applies to me, but it doesn't apply to somebody like Alafoke. Because why didn't they shut him down for fraud? They started to the music industry to inflate music analytics, right? Why haven't they shut down or something the chat? I know that they reduced the views of the DR live stream with iShow Speed, but for a significant inflation of between 300,000 to 1.9 concurrent viewers. That is significant. That is significant. How much money big difference between how much you'd be paid for 300,000 concurrent views or viewers in comparison to 1.9 million concurrent viewers. Now, shouldn't they have shut his thing down? Instead, I think they're defending him. The concept of buying bot streams is to fool the public. You are more popular than you actually are. That's the reason for buying the bot streams. So YouTube is saying that they know that when people are botting their streams, right? Yet still, it seems like many people get away. So what world are we living in then? How do we know that iShowSpeed's channel of over 53 or 55 now, probably 60 million subscribers, how do we know that that channel is not botted? And his views? Because one of the reasons I'm asking that to Jafar and all of you here is many people are saying that they had never heard about iShowSpeed before he toured Africa and certainly the Caribbean, right? How is it that he was able? He's so popular according to these numbers on YouTube, and the people don't know him. I'm not saying that everybody's going to know him, but certainly for somebody who has over 53 million and millions of views every day, people would have known something about him. They might have interacted with him, but they would have at least seen his channel. Just like somebody was asking me about Christmas list, right? Do you know him? I didn't really personally know him, but I heard of him. I would have seen him, but did not interact as much with his channel. Stephen Knight is saying they do not want you empowering Black people, and that is what you are doing the people that control YouTube, only buffoonery and ignorance. That's exactly what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. And it's hard to actually dialogue with them, because when they wipe out your subscription, they're asking you, can you send me a screenshot? I'm saying to them, how can I send you a screenshot when you have already reprogrammed the system? You have wiped out the history of my numbers. So I can't prove to you that that's what I saw. There's no way to prove to them. And then they begin to say to you that you don't have a screenshot, so they can't help you. That's what is happening. As usual, they pick up and choose who to enforce their rules on. And it seems to me that Alafoke is going to be, what do you call it now? They seem to be encouraging him to do it because he seems to be more popular now than ever before. Yeah, so we have here, is his page monetized? And yes, I have never heard of him until you mention him. Yeah, his page is monetized. That's why he's getting all that money and brand. All of what the tour that he's going on, he's getting millions of dollars. As somebody was saying, Stephen Knight, one Caribbean island can probably earn him, between the views and the sponsorships and the brand deals, he can get over $60,000 for just one Caribbean territory. And it grows. It grows. Yeah, so he's being paid. Both he and Alafoke are being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for breaking the rules. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah, so I think we had a very interesting discussion. So make sure you save the live, and not save it, but to share it. I keep on saying save, but share. Share the live, like the live, and hopefully people can. Tomorrow now, Mr. Pereira will be on with us, and we'll be talking about the war. Is the U.S. Winning or losing the war on Iran? So Mr. Pereira is going to be here tomorrow at 4 p.m. So I hope that to see you in another live. Please share that. Please go onto my YouTube site too. I did produce a video yesterday talking about the DR and Alafoke. Try to watch that video too and share it with many people. Like it so it can be shared, right? Because that Alafoke conversation is something weird and something that we need to speak about and to be aware of in this YouTube culture, because something is not right, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow, right? Have a great night.